It's inevitable.
One of these days. So you're working for the Blazers now?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
That's cool. How's that going?
Pretty good. I just went to this Nike training, coach training. I hadn't been to Nike's campus before, so that was really
Oh,
cool.
cool. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's really nice over there.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, have you met Nick West before?
I have not just heard the name.
Cool. He'll be on tonight, so he'll be a great guy to meet,
Okay,
honestly. That'd
cool.
be good, great connection for you. He's the best. I'm sure he'll help you out with anything he can. So,
Hello,
all right.
John.
Yeah. Who's that?
Yeah, hi. My name is George Quinlan. I'm calling from El Paso, Texas.
Nice, George. Good to have you, man. How did you get connected to here?
I'm the old man here.
Hey, we
Uh,
love it.
uh, I have read your articles for the last 2 years, so I really enjoy them. And when I saw your class advertised on LinkedIn, I signed up right away.
Man, I love it. Thanks for being here. We're glad to have you. So you,
You,
you probably have a lot of hoops and life experience you can share with us. So
hopefully a little, but I'm looking to learn from everyone here.
yeah, no, absolutely. Richard, where are you coming in from?
I'm north of Denver in a town, Loveland, Colorado.
Okay, nice. I think I've seen you. We've connected on LinkedIn prior as well.
Yeah, you've been great. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate that.
And I travel to Portland 2 or 3 times a year. I have
Oh,
a brother out there, so.
oh, nice. Very cool. Jada, always good to see you.
Hey John, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. And is it Farzad?
Farzad, yeah. Nice
Farzad.
to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. All right. Well, we're gonna get started. Super excited to kick off our training camp course here and just to meet all of you. And one of the things we always say is one of the most important things of class is just each other. One of the things we talk about is we've had even like speakers, from the NBA, they come in and they say one of the things they missed out on when they were per se on entry level positions was they did more connecting vertically than horizontally. And they're like, I should have done more horizontally because you guys all kind of raised together. And so getting to know each other is a big part of this. And, for those of you who've been in a course before, like at Summer League, just having a big squad together and hanging out and meeting one another. I'm John Ross. So getting the Game 101 kind of started with a blog. I wrote an article on LinkedIn and then wrote some more and then turned into these classes. Little my background, I'm from Indiana. Kind of if you've ever watched Hoosiers, that's literally where I grew up in the cornfields of Indiana. And then dream was always to, play in the NBA and then work in the NBA. I wanted to get into scouting, front office work, and didn't know what to do. That's kind of where a lot of this came from. Is like I'm like, how do I get a job in the NBA? I literally Googled NBA jobs and found a class and met some people and got a skill and then learned about video coordinators. So kind of my process was just, kind of the step by step of hopefully a lot of the things you'll gain of just making connections and building your networks and gaining experience. And, from there, I started to get some interviews and eventually got an internship with the Trailblazers as a video coordinator. And then I did that with the coaching staff for 5 years and then moved over to the front office and did video and scouting for 10 years with the front office. And so, and then, after that ended, we started rolling with getting the Game 101. So always awesome to have you. I'm going to introduce a couple more people who are big parts of what we do here. So Bjorn Zetterberg, we met with the Trailblazers. So I'll let him share a little bit about himself, but he's been with the Trailblazers, the Orlando Magic, Cerebro Sports, Pro Insight, Cleaning the Glass. He's dabbled in a lot of hoops areas. So Bjorn, take it away, brother.
I mean, do I even need to do an intro? You basically went through my whole resume, but yeah, what's up, guys? I'm Bjorn Zetterberg. Just what my experience in a nutshell. I started a scouting website called SwishScout.com after graduating from Oregon in 2010. We'll go into this more during the class, but I use that as a platform to gain access to local tournaments and events for access and free tickets into games to watch a lot of up and coming prep and college players. Helped me parlay that experience towards working for Portland Trailblazers shortly after on an analytics project and kind of shifted a little bit more into basketball operations. Did that for about 7 years. Was with the Orlando Magic remotely for a couple seasons after that in analytics and scouting. And then post COVID, I did a couple seasons as an analytics consultant after that. So, all in about a little over a decade in the NBA, working in the NBA and with teams for about 11 years. But I'm now currently working with Cerebro Sports on the data side, where I get the opportunity to wear a lot of hats with a startup. So it's been fun and interesting to be more on the business side, but definitely using my experience and my connections in that route to help the company. But I'm a father of two young kids, so you'll likely see me pop in and out during guest speaker segments. But glad to have you all here. It always ends up being a really fun class, and I talked to John about this earlier. I'm really proud of what we built over the past couple of years and the network that we've helped create, and just people that we've helped get jobs. And so excited to do another round. And my DMs are always open on Slack if you guys have questions anytime.
Yeah, thanks, Bjorn. Yeah, I mean, Bjorn brought up a bunch of things I would want to touch on there, but one thing, like Bjorn said, his DMs are open, mine are, Mikey V, like we're accessible. Like one thing, it's like, met a lot of you on LinkedIn. I can't say I'm overly accessible on LinkedIn anymore because so many messages come through. And that's kind of even part of why I started like the articles was just like, hey, here, read this. But that's where I appreciate you all entrusting us with. I know you guys paid to be in this class and you're part of it, and we try to keep it really affordable because we want people to be here, and we know like we don't make any promises. I know there's no formula to getting a job in the NBA or wherever you're looking, but there are best practices and there are networks and connections, and we want to help those. And then in the meantime, we just want this to be an enjoyable experience. We hope everyone gets the opportunity, whatever your dream is. We want to help you get there. But also, like I was talking about, just like enjoying the journey. And this is all part of the journey, enjoying the relationships and each other. And yeah, Bjorn touched on Cerebro Sports, which is awesome. They're going to be here. We got a few of that crew in for the class, and then next week we're going to have a training for everyone. So everyone's going to get Cerebro accounts, and you'll be able to start to use that platform as well. Next guy I'm going to introduce here. He helps host the classes. Mikey V, Mike Weisenberg. I originally met him just because he is at every basketball event in North America, basically. Any game I would go to, anywhere, scouting or anything, Mike was there. And so we started to see each other everywhere. And then we actually did like a pro inside basketball camp together and got to know each other. And then he kind of hopped on the team, but he's an NBA draft expert. He could tell you the measurements, box jumps of every 15-year-old basketball player in the country. He's a basketball machine. So Mikey, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Johnny, far too kind. Definitely cannot do that, even though you always say that I can. But yeah, it was just meeting John has been absolutely wonderful, and then getting to be close with Bjorn, us all being here in Portland has been great. Johnny, maybe not for much longer, but we'll see. But yeah, so basically my background is grew up in Toronto, Canada, loved basketball from a young age. My first ever event I went to, I was like in high school and saw like DeMar Johnson and Caron Butler and David West. They just came to play a tournament. But yeah, loved it since then. Really loved the NBA draft. Used to write on the message board at NBAdraft.net. Person that ran the site saw my stuff, asked if he could put it on the site. So he got more involved there. I've been covering the Nike Hoop Summit practices and games since 2012. It's where I met a ton of people I know in basketball. including, yeah, was my introduction to John, Bjorn, and Sonny, and Matt McKay, who I now work for at Pro Insight. So yeah, currently with Pro Insight, do some stuff for BAM testing, which is basic athletic measurements. They help put on the NBA draft combine. Recently was at Overtime Elite and University of Georgia doing some testing there. And then yeah, just like with Pro Insight, we cover a lot of grassroots, college, basically all the stuff that was right up my alley, with players outside of the NBA or just entering the NBA. So yeah, just pretty much love talking basketball, love connecting people with people that could maybe help them out. And just yeah, like John and Bjorn, I'm very open to talk. So if my DMs are definitely open in Slack as well. And my Twitter is NBA Draft Mikey V if anybody wants to hit me up there.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so one thing we're gonna touch on here as we start, because it's perfect because both Mike and Bjorn mentioned it, but Bjorn said, he created a website and started to put like some of the things he was going through analytically and built a website and scouting. And Ben Falk, who you guys may know, who was in analytics with the Blazers and then a VP with the Sixers and then created Cleaning the Glass, probably the best analytics site on the planet. But yeah, he saw Bjorn's stuff because Bjorn put it out there and created some good content, and Bjorn now has a career, a long NBA plus career from that. Mikey V, same thing, writing scouting reports, putting his stuff out there. So, that's one of the things, we recommend. And even a lot of our students now, we've seen like, they've created different things that Twitter is a hot place that NBA teams actually look on Twitter to hire people, just from like content that's put out there. So, one of the things for this class is we have a portfolio project and we leave it open end. Like we'll send you some examples of, what other people have done. But we also leave it open ended for you to create what you want to. And, within that, we always say, whatever you have time and space. We know that everyone's, obviously we're not grading it, but what you create, and some of you in this class have created content, and like, from the Getting the Game 101 accounts, we're happy to repost any of your content. Just ping me, make sure we see it. But also, we do have a lot of connections around the NBA, college. Me and Bjorn were talking today. Like I've had a handful of people just in the last week like hit me up. Hey, do you know anybody who would be a good fit for this job? And some of them are international, some of them are G League, just kind of all over the place. And so, the better we're able to get to know you, and that's where like even like again, you guys signing up for a class and being here, I'm gonna recommend you 100 times over before I recommend someone who like DM'd me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, where are the jobs at? What can I don't know those people." And so this is an opportunity for us to get to know you. And John Lichtenstein, who's going to be our first guest on here, he was in this class a couple years ago, and his portfolio was probably about the best I've ever seen, even to this day. And so it was an easy one for us to send around the league and go like, hey, here's what he's capable of. And so, with Mike and Bjorn, what we talked about of creating content that shows like what you're capable of, if that's the space you want to get in. But even from obviously the industry is tough to break into, but even like coaches will player development, creating websites of like video and of their work, and just making yourself accessible to people is a huge part. So I'm gonna kick it over to Bjorn, see what he wants to add regarding portfolio and work and how you want to direct those.
Yeah, like we said, it's pretty open-ended. Like definitely focus on like what your interest is in. Like if it's on the salary cap, then have some salary tables in there, maybe some breakdown, maybe some thoughts on like, okay, how can we maybe get under the cap or what kind of moves can we make? If it's scouting, like let's see some blurbs about each guy kind of thing. Or if it's analytics, you could definitely use like cleaning the glass or like some of that Cerebro stuff to get in there and find interesting tidbits on guys. Or if it's advanced scouting, like X's and O's kind of stuff, go through, watch some plays, break it down. Or if you're into like the video aspect, like putting together a video is totally another way to market yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a PDF. Really, like it is what you make it, very much so. Like I said, there's no real set path to this, so make sure it's something you have fun, you enjoy, that you can spend time, that you can improve yourself and get a good experience. And like I said, we'll give you guys feedback happily. And we've got some main takeaways too from like what we see are like the better ones every year too. And formatting is a big piece of that. For me, like length is a big piece too, because if you put out like a dozen pages, like just too much. Like no one's gonna read that. It's just like you put it in front of a high level decision maker, NBA personnel, they're just gonna like no. So you got to really be brief about what you present, how you present it, and make sure you really highlight your main points. Quick in, quick out. Make sure it's worth their time and you do it quickly because you only get so long to make a first impression. By so long, I mean like 15 to 30 seconds. So yeah, there's just a lot of little tidbits here and there, and happy to look at any of your guys' stuff that you guys want feedback on.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And we call Bjorn the master of feedback. So maybe Orlando experienced it. If you send me an email, I'll probably say, man, that looks great. And Bjorn will give you 10 pointers. So Bjorn's definitely offers really great feedback. But yeah, a few things he touched on. One thing we always say is like formatting. Formatting is huge. So like when you think about like entry level positions in the NBA, like you're working for someone. And so basically, like your opinion on coaching, scouting, analytics, anything doesn't really matter. You're there to format someone else's work. And then through promoting someone else's work is when, you're able to kind of show what you're capable of. And so that's where, we talk about formatting a lot, of just, how you create your portfolios is key, because for someone to look to, for it to catch their eye and for them to actually look at it, the first thing they're going to see is just how it's designed and is it appealing to the eye before they see any of your content. It doesn't matter how good your content is. And then from there, you're going to want to have content that is interesting. And so even so with the portfolio project, the first thing I have everyone do is just pick a team. And like Bjorn said as well, like enjoying it. Like we want this to be fun. So it's like pick an area of basketball you're interested in, and then that would be there's some basics to like a portfolio, like having a roster and putting their salaries on there, maybe some statistics and things like that. But from there, like dive into the part of basketball that you're interested in, and then for us, hopefully we'll be able to provide guests on here that can help you like really formulate. And like as we bring guests on that they're going to start coming on in 10 minutes, like probably I would guess anyone who's on this, like the Q&A is probably the best part of the class, of just your opportunity to ask questions. We welcome all of you to ask questions. There's a little raise your hand button on your Zoom, so that's what we would recommend. Just raise your hand, and everyone here is welcome to ask questions to our guest speakers. I'll usually ask them a couple of intro questions, and then we just open it up for Q&A. And so the areas of basketball you're interested in, if it's analytics, if it's coaching, if it's player development, if it's scouting, if it's basketball operations, we're going to bring in a bunch of different guests on here. And, we want you guys to be able to interact with them, build those relationships, connections. Even like when I say how I got a job, a lot of it was I sat in a class like this and the teacher liked the questions I asked. So then when he found out about a team, which was the Celtics at the time, who was interviewing, he recommended me just from his interactions in a class with me. And so that's where, you guys this is your time and space, and, take advantage of that. And then as you build your portfolio, focus on the parts that are fun to you. It shouldn't be a drag. If it's a drag to create, then that's probably not the space you should be in. You should look for an area that is fun. So hopefully, like, if you're in analytics, creating your portfolio around advanced analytics and stats and using someone like Bjorn to, create your content, awesome. If you're into coaching, we'll have an advanced scout in here who kind of talks about coaching and how that operates. We'll have Hopefully we've got a hopefully if he makes it today, we have a former NBA head coach coming in. And so, asking me like, how do teams prepare? What are they looking for? And even these same people who are coaches, advanced, like they're all refining their own, portfolios and their websites and everything. They're doing the same thing. And so, pick their brains on, we always talk about best practices, finding what people's best practices are. And then for you, and if it's, the salary cap, you know, dive deep into that. So, finding the thing you're passionate about. So kind of first thing is like pick your team. What team do you really want to dive into this season? And I say season because obviously the class is 4 weeks. But I would recommend like even for these portfolios of like really diving into a team for the whole season. Because one of the things we'll have you do is ask questions about the team, answer those questions, give your own thoughts, your own opinions, and then it's like you can track those things throughout the year and kind of see what that process is. Hopefully as you learn more and more behind the scenes of the NBA, you can start to see things unfold on the court as well. I'm gonna kick it over to Mikey V. You have any other thoughts here on portfolio action?
Not many other thoughts, but yeah, I think it's really valuable. Like the thing I was thinking of the other day is there was a podcast I listened to called Thinking Basketball that I recommend to people, and I'm sure a lot of people here already listen to it with Ben Taylor. And they were going over the pace and space of era and like the best teams in that era. And one of the teams they talked about was the Toronto Raptors. And I just remember Masai Ujiri, when he traded for Kyle Lowry, sitting down Kyle Lowry and showing him his portfolio and all the work that he had done and saying like, this is what, if I, lose my job, this is what I'm going to have to bring and what I'm going to have to show people. Just to kind of, I feel like it was maybe some motivation that like turned Kyle completely around, because at that time, he was known as a good player, but he wasn't necessarily the all-star that he ended up being, and the championship centerpiece that he ended up, or not centerpiece, but like at least part of it. But yeah, he was very key to that. So yeah, I think about all the work that it takes to get into the NBA. And I just think that's a really good exercise. You're going to be hearing from people that have been, first person in NBA training camp, including Johnny and Bjorn, and all of these speakers, or so many of them. But yeah, I'm just thinking of like, if you put your like heart into that work, it's just going to be something that you can put in your portfolio moving forward. So yeah, I just think it's a really strong exercise that you're doing here, and training camps, no better time to start doing that.
Yeah, just jumping in off that, like the old adage is, do the job before you have it kind of thing, and having something on hand like right away that you can show, like that goes a long way. Like I remember going to like summer league a few years ago when I was like interviewing with teams for scouting jobs, and people would say like, "Hey, can you send like, your stuff over?" And I just had a Dropbox link where I had like my resume, I had like a scouting map, I had some of my reports, I had some of my video, I had some of my analytic studies, just depending on how deep they wanted to go with any of it, and I could just literally send that link in like a second, and it's like perfect. Like you're organized, you're ready to go, you've got your stuff together, that kind of deal. So it just says something about organization, preparation, and attention to detail, and this is a great spot to get that, early practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
One last thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, Johnny. One last
Oh, you're
thing.
good.
And I think the other thing, like Bjorn was saying earlier, making it as concise as possible is something that I've learned, like, just is really important in the NBA. General managers, people in the front office, they generally don't have time to read like hugely in, you want detail, but you want it to as well be as concise as possible, just so it's digestible. So
Ju-
yeah, I think that's really important.
Jumping in again off that, that's like, so I a lot of my connections tend to lean like on the analytics side, and so like coming through like and seeing a lot of analytic projects, like some people like starting out just tend to throw a lot of stats on something, thinking, oh, I got to really cram this full, when really it's like just give me two or three good stats and expound on that a little bit. Like when we would do reports, like with Portland and Orlando, just what are the key things and what are the takeaways based on these numbers, not just boom, 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 boom. Like we have these automated reports that tell that kind of stuff, but what are the interesting nuggets within those, like the things that I'm going to be able to take away and remember, as opposed to just throwing everything at someone all at once.
Yeah. All right, that's a great start. And now we have our first guest, former student of Getting the Game 101 to the Mexico City Capitanes, and now with the Windy City Bulls, John Lichtenstein. How's it going, John?
What's up, everybody? How we doing?
Good, man. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, John, could you tell us a little bit about your hoops journey and now what you're up to with the Windy City Bulls?
Yeah, so Spark Notes version. I grew up around Chicago, and then I went to Syracuse University. I was not involved with the program, but I did some stuff with the basketball analytics club at our school, and then just tried to get my hands on as many things as I could, and that included coaching at my high school. I started a podcast out of my dorm room, and very long story short, someone that I interviewed on the podcast ended up becoming my boss at Sports Info Solutions. Rest in peace, SIS. And yeah, I just tried to get my hands on as many things as possible. I worked with an AAU program, City Rocks, which is part of EYBL, and got a bit fortunate with that, which I think anyone that's worked in this industry will tell you at some point they got lucky, something happened. And in that instance, they practiced in Albany, but with the COVID restrictions, they couldn't practice in Albany. So they had to practice in Syracuse, which is where we were. And that made it a little bit easier to get involved. And yeah, so graduated and, was kind of in a lot of your guys' shoes. If I could take a guess, where, I still want to get my foot in the door. And I had heard John's name come up a lot of times before I even knew you. I'd heard your name a lot, and reached out and joined your class. And during that, Nick Legios, who was Capitane's GM at the time, came and spoke to our class. And he had mentioned to John that he was looking for an extra scout. And I guess John was kind enough to mention my name. And that's kind of how that got started. And I also spent this past season with Pro Insight as well. And pretty much the exact same way how I got on board there, where Matt McKay came and spoke to our class. I got connected with Matt and ended up joining their staff. So, and then essentially how I got to Windy City was since I lived around Chicago, I was able to go to a lot of Windy City games for G League scouting for Capitanes. And so I was able to kind of get credentialed there, and over time just got to meet the staff. You show up enough times, eventually, people recognize who's this guy that comes to our games, 45 minutes, an hour early. And you eventually just start talking to them. And that, I guess, was kind of my interview. I didn't interview. That was just kind of how it kind of happened. And so yeah, looking forward to the season. Hasn't started yet, so I can't really speak to what my day-to-day is like, because I don't know what my day-to-day is going to be like yet. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got here.
No, that's awesome. Thanks, John. Yeah, one of the things you mentioned there that I think is applicable to wherever anyone is looking to land is being present in spaces. Like John said, like just going to games 45 minutes, an hour early, and meeting people. And that can happen at the college level, the high school level, any sport, whatever you're passionate about. A lot of and once again, like I go back to me and Mikey V, that's how we met. Is I was scouting and I would go to an Oregon game an hour, 2 hours before, and there's Mikey V. And so, there's a lot of, things like that are applicable to anyone of being present, building relationships. Like we said, I've talked about networking a ton, because I don't love networking for networking's sake, but I love meeting people. And like when someone messages me on LinkedIn and says, I want to network, that's so annoying to me. It's like, why? Like, I mean, to my own demise, someone scheduled a meeting with me last week, and I told them I would meet with them. They lived in Portland. And I was like, can you give me more context? Like, is this for Getting the Game 101? Is this for Recover 180? Is this for, and it's just like, I just want to meet, just want to meet. I I did not show up to the meeting. Not in It was unintentional. But I didn't get it on my calendar because I didn't put it on my work calendar. I didn't put it on my get in the game calendar. He gave me no reason to actually meet him, and it slipped my mind. It was my fault. I felt horrible, but also I was like, give some context of why you're connecting with someone, and to open those doors. But I love that, John, as far as you talking about being present in spaces. Because even I'm here in Portland, but at Trailblazer games, like for an NBA staff, they usually get to games 3 to 4 hours before a game, and players start working out. And people like John are around, like other scouts and other people are just hanging out. And people probably see a lot of competition in sports, but it's really a lot of connection. Like people go from team to team, and you see that all the time. So most of it, teams, they've all played, they've all worked together, people get along, and so people are, happy to see you. You build those, relationships and networks across the board. For those of you who have questions for John, feel free anytime to ask him. John, we spent the first part of class, kind of talking about what the class was going to look like. We dove into portfolios. Can you, and we told him, we was like, it's one of the best portfolios we've ever seen, which made it easy for us to share, which, worked out well. Can you, obviously you took part in the portfolio project. Can you tell us a little bit of, just some best practices and things that you did to help that be successful for you?
Yeah. First off, thank you. I think the thing that I think is the most important, and this is going to sound weird maybe, but I think how the content looks and how the content is presented is more important than the actual content. Obviously, I say that like, do your best on the content, make sure you know what you're talking about and everything. But for me, like if I saw something that was like a wall of text and it was like 12-point font and it was formatted poorly, whatever, that's what I like. And this is just me. This is my own advice. This is my own experience. I focus on that. I have a harder time focusing on like what is actually written, and also to me it almost undercuts. You could have found the next Nikola Jokic on your scouting report that you send me, but I'm less inclined to believe it. I think if it's formatted poorly, because it doesn't. That's the first impression, and first impressions matter. And that's if you send someone a PDF, because you can send this ideally, if you do a good job, you send it out as a work sample or you post it somewhere as a work sample. That first half a second, 1 second, 2 seconds where they see it, that's going to really shape the opinion of the report. I think. Again, just my own experience. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but so I think making sure it is easily digestible, looks clean, look easily readable, I think is the most important thing, especially when some of these people you may be sending it to, depending on the person, and they could be getting a bunch of cold messages, cold emails, throughout the week. And so it's that on top of their regular day-to-day job. So they don't have a lot of time, and people don't want to read, myself included. So making it is say as much as you can in as few words as possible, which contradicts at least my high school education and college education, where everything was a word minimum. Everything had to be X many words long. And then I get into the real world, and it's like, can you just get it in one page? Can you put it in one paragraph, 6 sentences, 8 sentences? So that's the most important thing. And to me, that looks if you're going to use colors in your report, like a background or something like that, all good. I like using that, especially if I'm listing stats. I will, if it's a good stat, like if you rank first out of 30th, the cell would be green. If you're ranked close to last, it would be red, something like that. I'm a big fan of that because I think it much more immediately can show how a team's doing. You don't even have to like dive into the numbers. You can just see, if nothing else, like, okay, green good, red bad. And that can be a launch point for another question that you might get asked about. So that, I would say, other small stuff, like make sure the font's big enough. Don't use contrasting like background. Like if you have sorry, I'm just spitballing whatever's coming through my brain of of what's good here. But if you have like a red background, make sure the font is not also red or something like that. Make sure it is contrasting the font with the background. Make it big, make it bold if you have to. I'm a fan of bolding certain parts of the sentence to even further concise whatever it is I'm saying. And then if they want to read the rest of the bullet point, they can. But if they just want like 5 words, it's bolded. I don't know exactly what remind me what the portfolio for the training camp will be. Like what kind of content's going to be on here?
Well, no, we kind of, we let you guys design it how they want to focus. Like obviously having roster, salary, stats, basics, and then taking it from there. Either diving into the salary cap or analytics, or and then we had the questions of, 5
That's
questions,
right.
and answering those and adding some of your own thoughts, opinions, forecasting onto it.
Yeah. Say the question maybe to what your skill set is. So like if you have a background in scouting, like if you want to make those questions geared more towards scouting to kind of showcase your expertise there. If you're a cap person, salary cap person, same thing. If you want to showcase, that you can kind of talk about a little bit of everything, you can make different questions about different things. Very small detail, but a huge pet peeve of mine is when and this might sound a little odd, but if you have like a header for a paragraph that's starting, like if you have question at the bottom of a page and then your answer to the question is at the start of the next page, just move that down. It's okay to have a little bit of extra space on that one page. Just put everything. For me, I think what I did was each question was on its own page, and I had a lot of white space at the bottom on some of them. But I just rather that and just keep it as separate and organized as possible. And again, that I think that makes it a little bit easier to read. So I think no matter what it is, making sure it looks presentable and very easily digestible, very easy to read, I think is like, if I could say one sentence, that's probably what I would focus on. And cite your sources. It's okay to use other sources. Just make sure you cite them. It's like no one's going to think less of you if you use no trade clause for your salary cap table instead of figuring it all out. It's like it's okay to cite that. So I would encourage you guys to do that too.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Like I said, a lot of this stuff you're doing of creating portfolios is doing the work that you want to do in the NBA. And so using sources, citing sources is all stuff you would do in the NBA. So you don't have to create everything on your own, but if you know where to find information and how to apply it, that's what's needed. And it's come up a handful of times, but of, being concise and everything. And that's where, we always say, one, do as much as you want and create whatever you want. So if you have a 30, 50, 100-page portfolio that you enjoy working on, like do that, but then also have a 1-pager, a 3-pager, something also concise that can be sent out easily. Because some people, there are people out there who might want to see like everything you can do. And so if you want to have 30 pages for them, that's awesome. But most people, it's going to be more in the 1 to 3 page range that they'll take the time to look at. And so, I always recommend having something of each. And then also having, a physical version, a digital version. Some of the people ask me like, what are the best resumes you've seen? A lot of them are websites where people created a website, especially like in the per se video coaching analytics side, where someone will literally have a video shows them working out players, shows how they go over player development and plays and things and what they're capable of video wise, and just having your own little space of like, here's everything I can do for you. One thing, I mean, you guys probably like, obviously getting a job in NBA at any level is challenging. But having, the things we always say, have a skill set, gain experience of putting yourself in position and showing what you can do. Because the people with entry level positions, all of you are probably so much capable of having a high level job in another industry, and you're going to go work for minimum wage or $20,000 to get an entry level in the NBA. And that's just part of the process. And that's where a lot of you have to make life decisions with these things. And even, John working in the G and Orlando, like you make life decisions with these things of like, how long do I want to do this? For me, I started as an unpaid intern with the Trailblazers for a whole year. Second year, I made $9 an hour. My opening salary was 20,000. It's not a lucrative industry to get into, but it's if you're passionate about it and it's your dream, I always go chase your dreams. And then it's like you don't have to be married to it. Like if you intern for a year or work for 5 years and then decide to walk away, like that's great. Like so all part of the process and journey. Questions for John, feel free to raise your hand. Jacob, what do we got, brother?
Yeah, what's up, John? Good to see you. I was just gonna ask, like, when you like one, what would you say is your specialty right now with what you do or what you did for the Capitanes, all that stuff, and what do you think it is makes you really good at that? And what advice would you give to people who are wanting to be good at that?
It's a really good question. Can I think about that for like 10 seconds?
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
I think that, making me talk about myself in like a very positive way too. So this is a little uncomfortable, but, I think, and I will say this, I've gotten conflicting advice when talking with people in the NBA about this. Cause my resume, my experience is very different than I think than most people that have gotten into the G League or the NBA. A lot of them were managers, right? And you don't have to be. Like, there's no like one right or wrong path. But I think with my experience, like I got experience in scouting and video and analytics and media and coaching like a little bit. And so I think the diversity, I think being able to do scouting, and then as we got closer, I was hired in March of 23 with Capitane, so right at the end of the year. And as the season approached, I expressed some interest in doing some analytics work, and we had a pretty small staff and things were flexible, so I was able to kind of make inroads and provide some value on that end as well. So I think maybe just being able to provide value in different ways, I think, and be a resource, be helpful in as many different ways as possible. Now, I've also been told that at some point you do want to specialize in something, because when you get hired to at an NBA role at a higher level, like you're going to be doing that thing. That's, again, I've heard that from some people. I've heard the opposite from other people. It just kind of, I think it honestly would come down to like what organization and people you're interviewing with should you get there. And what that, so I don't want to give like hard advice necessarily on like lock in on one thing or don't. I think that's just ultimately up to you, and then at a certain point up to the interviewers or whatever organization you're interviewing with. I think, to answer the second part of your question, I think, again, like I tried to do as great a job as I could with presenting information as easily as possible and as quick as possible, quick of a read, I should say, for our GM and my manager. And I'd like to think that I did a good job on that. I hope I did a good job on that. But that's something that I prided myself in too, because again, like information is good, but if it's something that can be easily digestible for not only the front office, but the coaching staff. I made some reports for the coaching staff as well. And specifically a Mexico City challenge was some of the coaches and players, like English wasn't their first language. And some of the coaches and players are more open to analytics than others. And there's no right or wrong there, but it's if you have information that is helpful, presenting it in a way that is digestible for someone that is very well versed in analytics, someone that isn't, someone that speaks English, fluently, someone that doesn't. And then again, that's where I think it really comes down to, if you have a graph, make sure everything is labeled and very clear. If you have a picture, label. I like color coding almost any single stat. If I have a list of stats, it's green to red. I've talked about that before. Conditional formatting, and Excel is your friend. So that, and then I think just also try to be someone that people like being around. That's, John's kind of talked about that as well. Because there's a lot of people that can do this, and if they don't like being around you, they can probably find someone else that they would tolerate more that can do the job also. So I think especially because you're going to be around them a lot. You know, if you're going to be an organization, you're around these people a lot. So be someone that is helpful, kind, and hopefully someone that people like being around. That answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. Great
Perfect.
answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff, John. Yeah, one thing that John mentioned that I just want to touch on of just how he kind of mentioned there's no strict path to, you're going to get a lot of different advice, and like even like from here, it's like I may give different advice than Bjorn or Mike or some of our guest speakers, and it's like, you know, every person, and this is, to me, this is like a life thing. Everyone's going to speak from their own experience. Here's what worked for me, and that's what you share. And then, you know, for you coming along this path, you take what works for you. My path isn't going to work for everyone. And as you get to know people who worked in the NBA and G League and WNBA, like everyone's path is different. So there's not a this. And so, you know, be open to what works for you. Caleb, we're fired up to have you in class. What do you got for us?
Glad to be here. Just had one question. So for John, wait, give me a second. I just had it right in front of me. My question was, so what tools and software do you use most frequently in your role on the analytics side, and how important is it to master those tools?
Great question. I don't know how to code. I'll put that. I'm not going to pretend I know. I have R on my computer. That's as far as I've gotten with it. So I take Excel. I use Excel, and I'll tell you what I did for the report for the portfolio, and I've done it a couple different times when I've had to make like a work sample. Free trial of Tableau, and I used a different email each time because that stuff's kind of expensive. And I used to have an account with school when I was in college that I didn't take advantage of as much as I wish I did now looking back. But that's what I did, was Excel and Tableau and formatting some stuff in Microsoft Word. That's about it. I don't have any coding knowledge. I'm sure whatever I did could have been done a lot easier and a lot quicker had I known to code. So I'm not suggesting like don't go learn to code, but if you want to code, go learn to code. If you don't want to go learn to code, and I think John's kind of talked about this too. Like if you don't want to go code, then don't. It's okay to not learn to code. So Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Tableau. To answer your question.
Thank you. Tableau was the first thing that came to my mind when you kept bringing up visualization.
Yep, it's really good and really easy to use. It's pretty quick to learn, I think, and
yeah,
pretty powerful once you get to use it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. I mean, even like with the Trailblazers, one of our scouting assistants, he became the Excel guy. And so like his job was basically became Excel, and he was the expert on Excel. And so yeah, like John just mentioned, I always gravitate towards what you're interested in. It's like the hot thing for like GMs for a minute was like having law degrees, you know? And it's like so many like people who wanted to be GMs went and got law degrees. And it's like, how many of them became GMs? Probably zero, maybe one. And I knew people who like they weren't even happy about doing it. And it's like, what is the point of that? Like, so, you know, if once again, like I say, if that's your thing, if you were interested in law, if you're interested in analytics, salary, like dive into that. But don't necessarily like if coding isn't your thing or video isn't your thing, like don't dive into that. You don't have to feel like you have to do something, you know, to get a certain job. Like me, the thing is like, what are you passionate about? What are you gonna do? Because like I said, you might not even get paid when you start. So what is fun to you that you wouldn't get paid for, and focus on those things. Orlando, awesome to have you. Pretty sure you know John. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, I wasn't even gonna ask him a question. I was just gonna hype him up. Like John was one of our best scouts, you know, the year that we had him on along with the staff. And the thing with him was he kept it real. Every once in a while, we had a WhatsApp chat, and Nick would ask us a question. Like, what do you think of this guy? And we'd give our opinions, and then all of a sudden, John would come up with something like detailed, and we're like, oh shit, yeah, he's actually right with that. And then it was like, yeah, you know what? With John saying that, he's actually accurate. He has a point on that and all that. And it just opened up to more discussion. So yeah, I actually texted him this morning just to say I'm really happy for him. I'm really proud of him. He's a great guy, um, working his ass off. So I'm just looking forward to seeing his future, see where how far he goes.
Thank you, man. That's really nice of you. Thank you.
No, it's cool. Thanks, Orlando. All right, Richard, fired up to have you here as well. What do you got for us, Richard?
Oh, thanks. I appreciate your guys' experience. Hey, like a lot of us, we follow scouting of college guys and see where they land, even in the G League. But is there a role for someone that follows the guys that didn't quite make it and go to Europe and maybe come back and have a cup of coffee in the G League and then back in Europe? I ran across a profile on Tiger Campbell in Germany, and I always liked his college game, and I wondered if there was a role for that person that follows the under radar guys. Thanks.
That's a really good question. I think short answer is yes. I think if you're good enough at something, there's probably a niche for it. And I know some people that specialize in the very fringe random college players. Orlando probably knows who I'm talking about. Just if you could ask him about some random guy at Louisiana Lafayette, and he's got a whole write-up in 30 seconds that he already has, and he can send it to you. So having a niche like that, because anyone can send a scouting report on Victor Wembanyama. He's good at basketball, cool. But if you can get a guy that's like, hey, this guy could be a potential two-way candidate, and that guy turns into an NBA rotation player, like that's very valuable, especially in like the second apron environment and all that, getting guys on great team friendly deals. But to answer your question further, I know there's some people that serve as like consultants for European teams, and that's kind of right more up your wheelhouse if I'm hearing your question right. And I'm sure teams would also welcome, international teams would welcome some assistance there. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know the market for that. I don't know. That's not something I'm super well versed in, but I know that there are people that make a living, I think, or at least carve out a niche doing similar stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll piggyback a little bit yeah, there's definitely spots for that. There's people in the league with each team that are tracking those guys, and some of those are really hard guys to track a lot of times, and they get lost. Or even, I mean, speaking of Mexico City, like Nick, the GM at the time, like he would even reach out to me about like former Blazers who had like kind of got left behind in Europe, and where are they, and do they want to get back, would they play for the G? And so and a lot of those relationships would come through agents as well. That's how you kind of keep track of players a little bit. But with that, if you're scouting those fringe players, a lot of it is per se intel of what can you, and that's where, even going back to reports and portfolios, what can you add of, like, obviously, hundreds of people are going to know who this player is, but do they know who their agent is? Do they have a contact? Do they have intel on this player? Like, why didn't he work out with teams? Why did he work out overseas? And the more kind of information you can gather, and some stuff you can find online, and just putting together information, then that's where it really becomes valuable to a team. When you go like, I actually have contact people, I actually have like intel and information. So when you're building your own kind of scouting and looking at people, those things can be really helpful.
Yeah. One other thing real quick to piggyback off your piggybacking. Yeah, I don't think you could ever get enough intel. I think that's the thing that I believe is true. But I heard a great analogy a couple weeks ago, and it was be a gatherer, not a hunter of intel. And I think that that's something I try to be really cognizant of is not hunting somebody for information, because I think you can see through that pretty easily if you're just kind of reaching out to someone trying to get information. So that's where the relationship building, as opposed to just networking, like relationship building, is when you can kind of gather intel over time. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Reed, what's up, brother? What do you got?
Thanks for joining, John. I was curious. I know in terms of like the analytics space and more specifically, like when predicting salary, a lot of people have different ways of kind of calculating that type of metric. And kind of keep it to themselves in a way, like don't want to, release how they evaluate a contract using statistics. In a scenario like that, like how have you learned from other people in, formulating your own statistics and, kind of learn from other people while also, diminishing like your value without diminishing your value, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. I've never like formulated my own statistics or a like a model. So I can't speak to directly answering that, but I will say there are a lot of people that know so much and post their work. And I've learned a ton from other people. It's okay to admit that you got, a really good insight from someone else. Again, that's where I think like citing your sources and being like proactive and giving credit to other people. To me, I view that like as like you are. I think this is my own theory. I think that people want, if they aren't setting a source that they're kind of wanting to get their own knowledge and not diminish the value. I think it's because they want to be smart. They want to be seen as smart, right? To me, if I see someone that is like proactively crediting other people's work, I see that as more smart. So that tells me you are more well-read. It tells me you are more empathetic. It tells me you care about other people. Those are all very like positive traits. So it's so to answer your question, maybe in a bigger sense. I'm sorry, I can't more directly answer what you're asking. I would say if you see something that you like that you came across, note it, and maybe you reach out to the person. Maybe it's someone that you have like a one connection away from, where you have a mutual contact, and you say, hey, I just came across this and this is really good stuff, would love to learn more about it, something like that. And if you have a work sample that you came across where someone's work kind of influenced what you were doing, I would do that too. So I'm sorry I can't directly answer if that's kind of where my mind's at with that.
Yeah, good
It's a
stuff.
great question though. Great question though.
All right, Farzad, what do you got?
Hey John, my question for you. Obviously there's so many styles of basketball globally in these, all these leagues across the world. What kind of factors do you look at from a scouting perspective to see whether a player can translate into the American or NBA style of game? Like, for some players are just great in other leagues, a different type of style may not necessarily translate to the NBA game. How are you able to recognize that, to see if, yeah, this guy's great, but maybe, might not fit into the style that's played in the NBA, or this guy's not great in this other league, but some of the skill set he has, I think, could translate more positively in the NBA. Like, what kind of factors do you look at when trying to see the transition from different leagues across the world to the NBA?
Yeah, so for me, shooting, perimeter guy, we kind of almost have to be able to shoot, and feel. Do you know how to move off the ball? Do you know how to make decisions with the ball? Those are I think feel both with the ball in your hands and without on both ends. So if do you know when to cut? Do you know when to relocate? Do you know when to set a screen for somebody? Defensively, can you anticipate a rotation? Stuff like that. I think that's the thing I value the most. And then again, shooting, and ideally you have some size. Those are like the three things. But again, there's so much that goes into each single player. But yeah, no, there's a lot of different play styles. And that was a big learning curve for me with Capitanes. Was there was a lot of leagues that I had never once watched a Brazilian league ever in my life. And I had to go, that was my first game, and it was very slow. Everyone posted up. Guys were like tackling each other and there were no fouls. Like, it was just a very different style of basketball that I had to watch. So to your point, yeah, it's hard. That was like the biggest learning curve for me, was like, okay, yeah, this guy is pretty solid in Brazil. But what does that mean for the G League? So some of that is just trial and error. Some of that is like, if you get enough reps at it, and you kind of have to let a season play out to see if you were right or wrong. And then just going back through your misses, go back where you were right. Why were you right? If you were wrong, why were you wrong? What did you miss? What did you overvalue or undervalue? And I think just kind of over time, you can tweak it to to where you're less wrong than other people. That's really the goal. You're not trying to be. I think Seth Partnow said that. You're not trying to be right. You're just trying to be less wrong than everyone else.
Yeah, no, that's a good word. And just like John said, of like, when you're writing scouting reports, for those of you who are like interested in scouting, like keeping track of that stuff is really important on your like own growth and seeing how you process. Because like John, like so when I first got in the NBA and like I started doing like I loved the NBA draft. And so, I started doing all my rankings and writing reports on players. And it took me a long time for like international players. Obviously, international, even now, like any player, like John just said, just trying to be less wrong. But I just had some major misses, and it's like I didn't understand that level of competition from league to league. And then players started going to Australia, and players started going to Europe, and you started having to learn all these different leagues, and then the G League and Overtime Elite, and so if you love watching basketball, like yeah, watch all of it, all the different leagues, and that becomes a niche. Even like with the Blazers, we had, one guy on our staff who he was obsessed with watching basketball, and we knew, this is the guy who knows every player on the planet. He knows where they're playing at, yada yada. And then, teams have their international scouts who, used to you might have one who'd cover the world, and now like they have, 4 to 10 all over the place because there's just so much basketball everywhere. But ultimately, this GM's final decision, but even like, as you do your own rankings throughout the year of like understanding the level of competition and who they're playing against and all of that stuff is really valuable. Uh, Basil, what do you got, my man?
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, here we go. All right,
Yeah,
thank
you're
you
good.
again, John. I appreciate it. Everyone hears about the, speed and pace of the NBA. To you, how is the speed and pace in the G League, and how do you balance out developing your craft and also knowing that it's still a job and you have to get the work done?
Are you referring to me or the players?
To you as a
To me.
professional.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is do what you're asked, and if you have the ability to be proactive and provide value elsewhere, try to take that. How I did that was, if selfishly, I was like, what would I want to see if I was kind of like a higher up, or if I was reporting to me. There's never really a conscious thought I've had until right now, but like if I was reporting to me, what is something that I would want to see? And so I think anything that can save your boss's time, anything that can save your boss's some just energy, I guess. I think that there's not a lot of wrong answers if that's where you're looking, and if you can just pay attention to that, and that's true for any job. That's not even just a basketball thing. If you can kind of pay attention to that, I think some answers might kind of just come organically.
All right, I appreciate that, John.
All right. Well, John, we're going to let you get out of here. But as always, it's awesome to have you here. Always great to see you. Let us know if you're traveling out to Portland to play the remix sometime. But excited to see where things go with the Windy City Bulls. But as you take off, what kind of life advice would you have for anyone, basketball or life related, before you take off?
Oof. All right. Well, I can share a quick story. When I say quick story, I mean like 30 seconds. It was 2020, and I was a research analyst intern at a like sports sponsorship consulting firm, basically. Not basketball related, but my boss happened to know someone who was the assistant general manager of a team at the time, so very high up, and he got me on the phone with him as like a favor because I was an intern and he just wanted to help me out. And that call was in 2020 and was like a very discouraging phone call. The guy was not very nice. He basically told me, he didn't say I didn't have a shot, but it was very much implying like you got to do something here, or find something. So I didn't leave that call encouraged. There was another instance at Summer League in 2021. I was at sports business classroom, general manager with a team at the time. Had everyone stand up, and he said, sit down if you weren't a player or a manager with your college program. It's like half the room sat down, including myself. And he flat out said at a networking event, I wouldn't hire any of you that are sitting. So I've had multiple times where it was like kind of like an oh shit kind of moment of like, am I cooked? Is this it? Like, do I have, you know, no shot here? So I hate to say like the cliche, just like stick with it, but I didn't listen to them, I guess, I mean, for better or worse. So now it's 2024, so it's taken a bit, but yeah, that's just true for basketball. It's true for life, and try not to take it so serious. It's very easy to kind of get in your own head about stuff, and it's very discouraging at times, you know, with the amount of rejection and just how competitive it is. So not just basketball, but life. Try not to take the work seriously and take your responsibility seriously, but try not to take yourself too seriously. So yeah, I'm adding my LinkedIn in here. Feel free to message me. If I don't get back to you right away, like, do it again. Message me again. Follow up. I know I have some people that I have to get back to. So yeah, anyone in here, feel free to connect. And yeah, thanks for having me on, John.
John, you're the man. We'll catch you later.
See you guys.
Thanks, John.
All right, next guy we got here, one of our core Get in the Game 101. We missed him at lunch today because he lives in Canada, but we're going to see him on mid-November. So Sonny, formerly of the Memphis Grizzlies, currently coaching all over the place in Canada. I'm not even fully sure what you're up to. You'll have to let us know. But always great to have you. And Sonny, can you tell us a little bit about your hoops journey and what you were up to in operations with the Grizzlies?
For sure, yeah. So, like John was kind of alluding to, I've always just had a lot of different basketball jobs. Something I've done as a side hustle. 2019, kind of the summer before the pandemic, I had a chance to move to Memphis for a full-time role. I actually said no the first few times I was asked. I'd taken a part-time assistant coaching job, and I wasn't trying to move my family across the country, but. Some would say a smart man, some would say an evil man told me that you kind of only get one shot at this and you might regret it if you don't do it. So that was enough for me. It was meant to be a 1 season thing, but ended up being 3 seasons. Kind of because of the pandemic and kind of because the work was interesting and engaging, and it's just as you guys all know, it's nice to be around basketball. So being around it at the highest level is definitely something that's hard to give away.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. Sonny, and if you guys we only have Sonny for a short amount of time, so if you got questions, we got to get them in quick. But Sonny, could you dive into a little bit what an NBA training camp looks like while you were with the Grizzlies?
Yeah, absolutely. So training camp is usually the funnest time. For when I was there, we were a young team. We were just starting out. Everyone was really new in the first few seasons. We had a decent amount of roster turnover, but not a ton. We had our core guys there the whole time. So for us, it was just kind of picking up new projects, putting in new stuff offensively and defensively. Like I have a coaching background, so I always was interested in that, even though I wasn't doing a ton of coaching on the pro side. But yeah, just everything was new. You're 0-0, so everything is optimistic. You're hoping the Exhibit 10 guys you have in camp are going to pop. You're excited about the young guys that are coming back, and just an awesome time to be around a team. I would say one of the only points in the calendar where it's really like all about learning.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Can you dive in a little bit of you specifically, what your role would be and what you would do then?
So first year I was there, we were just starting I was hired to do like a video analytics player development project. So we were just kind of ramping that up. We had a ton of meetings, kind of going back and forth with a new front office and a new coaching staff, and a lot of young players on exactly what we wanted that to look like. And as I'm sure you'll hear from a lot of people that talk in this class, it's basically just like whatever falls in your lap is what training camp looks like. So, I've walked guys from the hotel to lunch. I've walked guys from the facility to their apartments, help people find houses, like really like whatever you want. If you have a car, you'll probably be picking guys up from the airport. Um, it's really just like all hands on deck at all times. And then the funnest part of it is watching the like training camp practice, because that's the time of year when pretty much everyone from the team is in town.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like just NBA wise, like NBA, staffs can be spread out. So like you might have scouts different places in the country or international. You have your advanced scouts who scout other NBA opponents. But yeah, training camp, the whole staff, everybody, your training camp players, your G League squad, like you kind of have the whole crew there. And so yeah, like so, and that's like the one time, the only other time I'd say that it might be like that is in the playoffs. And that's just kind of a little bit because you still have your advanced scouts on the road and stuff, but typically playoff time, if your team is so lucky to make it, then a lot of those people will have the opportunity to come kind of rejoin. And kind of like Sonny said, actually playoffs and training camp not dissimilar as far as the all hands on deck, anything goes, anything happens, be available. Yeah, of just driving guys around and picking things up and rebounding and like all that stuff is no matter what your job is. You could be at the front desk, you could be a scout, you could be a coach. And yeah, Sonny and Bjorn could speak to this, but I always say like probably your job of whatever you're doing for a team is probably 40% of what you actually do. And so even going back into all this stuff is like obviously you got to have some kind of skill and something to offer a team, but then you just have to be available to do anything once you're there. Um, Sonny, do you have any fun training camp stories for us? Any highlights, things that stand out in your time?
Yeah, pretty early in my tenure in Memphis, we had a scrimmage, and it was one of the first scrimmages we had, and we had brought refs in, just local guys who were refing. I'm sure we paid them, but not enough for the abuse that they were taking from NBA guys. Like the young guys were treating them like it's a playoff game, to the point where our head coach like blew the scrimmage dead, and it's like, what are you guys doing? What are you thinking? These are like just local college refs, like get off their ass. Um, that was kind of a fun moment about just like how intense those guys are, even in the smallest situations. Like, this is the first scrimmage of a training camp, and they're already on 100, and that's why guys are in the league, because they're ultra competitive.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, we had that same stuff with the Blazers. It's like people were almost in fistfights, and it was with the local officials.
Yeah.
But it's like NBA players, they do love to complain, and they are ultra competitive, and training camps can get wild. And plus, you have the dynamics of like a lot of things depend on your star player could either be the most ultra competitive or the guy who kind of wants to like sit out. It could go either way. But then you have a bunch of people fighting for a roster spot, fighting for time on the court. You got 10 players on the court and you got, 19 guys at training camp. Like, and so those are always interesting dynamics of who forces their way onto the court. Because most people in life, like they don't love practice. But it's in training camps are an interesting space because you see the guys who do love practice because they will find any way to get on the court. And yeah, I was talking to Sean Smith here earlier about an NBA training camp and just of like it's like man, it's like it's that time where anything in life be the first one there, last one to leave, all that kind of advice. But like NBA training camp for those guys trying to get that 15th roster spot or that two-way contract, like it's more true than ever. And it's interesting because again, not most players don't do it. Like they're not the first one there. They're not the last one to leave. And it's kind of mind-boggling because it's like you got like maybe a 1 week window for your entire career. But as you watch NBA, a lot of it's their job, and that's fine. Like a lot of them are just they're bigger, better, faster, stronger, and they're really good at basketball. And like each year, even like, 15 years with the Blazers, I could probably count a handful of players who love basketball. It's not 15 guys on the roster, it's usually one or two who love basketball. Like, and that's where like you see, a Damian Lillard is such a great example to me, because he and another great example for us was like Wesley Matthews, like an undrafted player. But these guys who like are self-made players, like, Dame can shoot easily from 40 feet because he stays after practice for 3 hours and shoots, like, because he loves basketball. And so you see these players who take training camp, or like, Wesley Matthews obviously as an undrafted player and then had a great career. For us, like a Will Barton, who was a second round player, but I've written an article before, but like he was the one at training camp kicking all the first rounders off the court, like checking himself into the game. And it's like, people are like, well, why is he on the court? But he would never leave. And, eventually he carved out a really nice career for himself. So there's always a lot of, interesting dynamics that start in training camp. Sonny, do you want to tell us a little bit of, I know you're up to some interesting things now in basketball and analytics and web. Do you want to share about any of that stuff that you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, back to basketball as a side hustle. A couple of people I met along the way wanted to collaborate on stuff. If you guys remember Matt Mooney, who played at Texas Tech when they made the Final Four, he's doing like an AI shooting company. So basically like a camera with some computer vision that'll help you with your shot. Pretty cool, just the level of like detail that some pro guys go into with that. Like some of them do it all by feel. The technology stuff has come such a long way. Even like the NOAA system that teams have in-house, which kind of gives real-time feedback. But he's doing something similar to that. So just advising for him and doing some data projects. I've kind of been in the startup space and in the NBA space, so that kind of puts me in a unique spot. A good friend of mine who's a developer wanted to work in the league, and I said there's probably another way where you can work in the NBA without having to be at the whims of a team 24/7. So him and I have kind of collaborated and created like a basketball data product that we are now trying to sell to teams. You can check it out. It's basketnovowels.ca, bskt.ca. Kind of bare bones right now, but really just a lot of teams who hire analytics guys will hire guys that are super smart, like guys with resumes like Jacob, who's in this class, where they're insanely smart and they're basketball guys, and they'll hire them to do like back end development and front end development, which is a wild misuse of their of their talents, and not at all what they want to be doing. So we're hoping to fill that gap a little bit. And then, yeah, like Johnny was saying, I'm coaching here at a local university, just doing some assistant coaching, mostly because I can't play anymore, really. So mostly to keep my legs moving and keep myself on the court.
Love it. Sonny, always great to have you. And Sonny's a regular here, so you guys might see him pop in again in the next few weeks. So if you got questions for him, and want to hear more about, what he's up to, hopefully you'll be able to do that. But Sonny, do you have any parting words of life advice, basketball advice on your way out here?
Yeah, I hilariously, that story that John was telling, I was at that sports business classroom. I was actually presenting then. Johnny, you can probably guess who the GM was. It was a couple more steps than the making people stand up and making them sit down and then cussing them out. So don't give up. All of this stuff is really fun, honestly. Like if I hadn't worked in the NBA, I wouldn't have regretted any of the basketball work that I did. It's all been a blast. I've met some amazing people, including a number of people in this class. You don't know when your break is going to come, if it's going to come, but enjoy every step of the way.
Awesome. Sonny, great to see you, brother. Can't wait to see you in person soon.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
Later. All right. Super excited for our next guest here. We've had NBA head coaches, GMs, scouts, but we've never had a director of basketball operations right in the thick of NBA training camp, taking time out of his life. One of the greatest guys you could ever meet. Nick West, awesome to have you.
Johnny, great to see you, man. And I would say the same about you. Right back at you. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Nick, can you dive into, I know your story is phenomenal, but starting out as a team attendant with the Seattle Supersonics, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to your current role?
Sure. So like you said, I grew up in Seattle, just an avid sports fan. Loved rooting for the Sonics, the former team that was before the Thunder, and got involved with basketball camps. Played all through grade school and middle school, and a little bit into high school. But I started helping out with the Sonics kind of in middle school, just doing some game night jobs. Did that into my high school years. And then when I became a junior in high school, I got a chance to be a team attendant, as Johnny referenced. And that was kind of my so-called big break to be around the team more. I was at a lot of our home practices, at all the games. Did that all the way through my sophomore year of college. My last year in Seattle was the year the Sonics played the Bulls in the '96 finals. So it was just a really special way to kind of end my time there, just being able to see Jordan and those guys up close. And we had a great team in Seattle. Just unfortunately, we ran into an even better team in Chicago. But just learned a ton from guys like Bobby Medina, who well, Johnny, and Tim Gergerich. Terry Stotts was an assistant on that staff, who Johnny and I were both fortunate to work under for many years in Portland. Dwayne Casey was an assistant. So there was just so many good people on that staff that really took young guys like myself under their wings and just allowed us to be around and learn. And so as I was finishing up my time in Seattle, I asked Coach Gerg and Bobby, like, hey, are there anyone around the league, any opportunities to stay involved? And they put me in touch with Mark Workentine, who was the director of scouting with the Trailblazers. So then I moved down, transferred to Portland State, and finished up my schooling, getting a business degree, but also kind of being an intern / just do whatever they ask around the office and whatever was needed. So I did that for 4 years. Really enjoyed my time. Then there were several changes within the organization, and so for the first time in a while, I found myself outside of basketball. Did some work at some law firms. Was thinking about law school. Quickly realized that wasn't my calling. Moved back to Seattle. Got married. Did an internship with Rich Cho, who at the time was the assistant GM with the Sonics. I was fortunate enough to meet Rich when I was a ball boy and he was a legal intern, and so we just kept in touch. You never know where relationships take you in the league, and that was one that where he kind of we got back in touch, and there was an internship. So did an internship with him, wanted to stay on full time. They would not approve any budget for the job, so I had to step aside from that. And then I went on to work at Microsoft in recruiting. My way to stay around the game was to coach high school basketball. So I was coaching JV basketball and a varsity assistant at Eastlake High School, which is just outside of Seattle. And then how I got back into this role, into the NBA in 2010, was Rich became the GM with the Trailblazers, and this job opened up. And my time as an intern, he realized I had a lot of skills he was looking for in terms of organization, things that really fit the director of ops role. And then for me personally, my previous experience, my knowledge of basketball, but also my time at Microsoft and also doing business work, where I learned a lot of skills around email and Excel and Word and documentation and travel, which I do a lot of now. I was booking travel for interview candidates. So that experience really helped me as I transitioned into this job. It was a nice kind of combination of things I'd done in the past. So sorry, that was a little long-winded, but that kind of takes you through kind of my journey to this point.
Yeah, no, that was amazing because you touched on a bunch of things we've already kind of brought up in class of the importance of different things, especially, the number one thing, like we said, relationships, where it's like Nick can go back 20 years to a relationship that then like 10 years later, something there, and just the importance, Nick, we were talking about not so much connecting vertically, but horizontally with your peers. And that's just a perfect example of a peer reaching out and building those relationships. And the importance of like, even from Microsoft Word and Excel, that's come up multiple times of just knowing how to utilize those. If you guys have questions for Nick, feel free to go ahead and raise your hands. But Nick, one of the reasons I'm super excited to have you because you're Nick West. But as a Dobo, one of the things I always recommend to people who are just like, who do I contact with the team or whatever? I usually go, contact human resources, see what's available with the franchise. And if you can contact Adobo, they can get you connected to basically anyone in the franchise. So can you tell us a little bit from your perspective for people who are looking for entry level roles in the NBA? What are some best practices for that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I always tell people, figure out kind of some interest areas. So do you want to be in scouting? Do you want to be in, communications? Do you want to be in operations like I am? Do you want to coach? And then once you've kind of pinpointed those areas, then try to contact people around the league, and it can be just sending people emails, right? Go through the NBA team directories, and you want to be in video, figure out who the video coordinators are, and send them an email and just say, hey, I'm looking to break into video. Here's quickly my background. Here's my resume. Do you have 10 minutes to hop on the phone at some point and I can ask some questions, right? You're going to get probably a lot of people that don't respond, but you will get people that respond. I try to always respond to people because I know what it's like to have been trying to get a job at one point, right? And then from there, you may get some advice, and at a minimum too, you're going to develop a connection. And sometimes the connection is really good, and sometimes it just kind of stops there. But you can learn a lot on those phone calls, and you can gain knowledge of, asking people about their story. People love to tell their story. So, hey, how did you get where you are? And you may learn some things from that person, right? Or there may be a mutual connection that you didn't realize that you have with that person on the call, and then it sparks something else. So, there's work involved. I think a big thing too is if you're going to send emails to each team, just make sure you personalize it. You can have a template that is kind of the same, but we've gotten emails, and Johnny can attest to this in the past, where it's very clear that someone has like copy and pasted your name, or they get your name wrong, or so just be aware of details too when you're reaching out to folks, and also aware of the time of year. Like, probably you don't want to reach out to a person who's about to go into the playoffs, right? Or they're dealing with something. You can kind of look at the schedule and say, okay, yeah, he's probably pretty busy. So you try to find times that make sense to connect, or at least send an email where they are going to be in a place to receive that. But that's what I've seen work. And, we've hired people here where they've reached out, they've been just wanting to get a conversation. And sometimes you never know where that's going to go. But as Johnny said, relationship building is really important, and gaining intel, especially as you're early in your career, just understanding what roles are, because you may have an idea of what a role is, and then you may hear more about it and say, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. You may shift somewhere else. So those are just some things that I've seen work well for folks.
Yeah, no, that's so much great advice. Hope you guys are taking notes on this, or you can watch it later. But one thing Nick mentioned was like personalizing it. Like he said, like, where me and Nick kind of sat a couple seats from each other, and then the coaches were right next to us, the GM was right next to them, our analyst, we were all there. So it's like sometimes if an email came in to all of us at the same time, we would just kind of laugh about it and joke.
Yep.
In the copy and paste, people so many times would, leave the wrong team name in and you could see copy. So like, I think it's more beneficial to send 10 personalized notes than 1,000 copy and paste. And Nick mentioned as well, like finding, pieces of connection. Nick, I don't know. You might remember Vasu Gupta, but like he was someone who he went to the University of Washington. He was a student manager, reached out to me. I took a phone call with him, and I talked to him, and he had all these connections in Seattle and stuff. And I was like, oh, you should talk to Nick West. So I talked to him, I sent him to Nick, and now he's on his third year as a video coordinator with the Detroit Pistons. And so like, and he was just a student at Washington looking to meet people and connect. And then I mean, full circle, Nick, like then he was with the Pistons last year and needed a gym to work out in. And so he reached out to me, and then I contacted Marshall Cho, and we went over to Lake Oswego, and the Pistons worked out over there.
Yep.
So all these connections, you just never know, where they're going to end up. All right, first question, Jacob Sutton, what do you got?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Thanks for taking the time. I guess my question is, what does your day-to-day look like as a Dobo, and how do you feel that your time away from the NBA helped you learn the skills that you need to do what you do now?
Yeah, great question, Jacob. Day to day, so my key areas of responsibility are team travel. I budgets, so all basketball operations. And so budgeting is done throughout the year, where monthly I'm, giving updates to our management team on how we're tracking in the areas of spending and travel, scouting, our practice facility. Team travel is getting the team to and from. So, handling our room lists, our itineraries, everything with Delta. We fly with Delta. Most of the NBA teams do on private charters, and so you have to have the manifest correct. Working with our equipment manager, who's actually director of equipment and logistics, our team nutrition director, and just the different key kind of stakeholders within our basketball operations department to figure out who's traveling. And so you're constantly doing that. Pre-draft travel is huge in the spring, kind of around May, June. We bring prospects in. So the operations team, there's 3 of us on the ops team, and then Eric Hallman, who's our director of logistics and equipment. Great guy. He's really heavily involved too. So we're all kind of working together. Sometimes you've got a player that gets hurt, right? And you've got to fly him somewhere for a procedure, right? Or, now with the G League team, you've got 2-way guys that are going back and forth. And so there's a lot of coordination outside of the team too, that we are doing. Some of the things I'm doing too, it's like a lot of people have a credit card within our department. You've got to reconcile receipts, and those flow into budgets, and we got codes. And so, there's a lot, it's really all the logistics and financial components that are behind the scenes that influence the team movements and also kind of our spending. Those are really some key areas for me. I've also had management of our facility over many years. That's kind of changed the last couple of years, where we've kind of folded that into the arena operations, but I'm still heavily involved in like our scheduling and working with them on all the things we need at our practice facility. And then you asked how my time outside the league helped. I think that a couple of things, right? I had spent a lot of my younger years working in basketball. And so I think it was really good for me to have jobs outside of the NBA, just to understand the corporate world and a little harder environment, right? Sometimes the NBA can be a little bit of a unique environment. There's a lot of great things about it, but being at a place like Microsoft and some of the larger law firms I worked at in the Bay Area, it just gave me a lot of so-called office skills, where I was, like I mentioned earlier, on Word, on Excel, meeting deadlines, handling, hundreds of emails a day. Like Microsoft, I was doing a lot of coordination of travel for interview candidates, but I then shifted into a lot of internal candidate onboarding, working with HR a lot. So I work with HR a lot in my role now. I work with finance. So there's just been a lot of crossover. But at Microsoft, we were responsible for hundreds of emails a day, and there were certain benchmarks in terms of, hey, you need to respond within this many hours. And so I got used to a lot of volume and meeting deadlines and learning how to be professional in terms of my responses. If I couldn't get to something right away, it's like, hey, I got your email. I'll be back to you within, the next few hours. And that has really played out into this role, where as a Dobo, you kind of have your hands in a little bit of everything. So sometimes I'm in budgets, I'm in travel, and I've got to shift. And then I get pulled into a facility meeting, and I've got to be able to keep everything kind of moving and prioritize well. And I think my time at Microsoft, especially, I learned how to deal with volume and prioritization, and just how to manage up to some of the key people above me, and learning how to communicate well with them. So really, really beneficial. And then I had a lot more appreciation for basketball in the NBA coming back in my second time. Really thankful for the time I've had here. I didn't expect this to be a 14-year job. You come into it hoping for the best, and been very fortunate to be here this long. But I really had a bigger appreciation for it coming back the second time, and into a different role than maybe I had when I was younger. So yeah, hopefully that answers your questions.
Yeah,
no,
for sure.
that was
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you.
Thanks, Nick. We're adding another guest in here as well. We are fired up to have Caleb Canales. Started out as a video intern, all the way up to the head coach of the Trailblazers. Was an assistant coach with the Knicks, the Pacers, the Mavs, Team Mexico, Texas Legends. You can find him basketball courts everywhere, and you can find him watching the Atlanta Braves right now. I hope they can get it together. But anyway, actually, speaking of relationships and, like we said, connections and point, 4 people on this call are in the same fantasy football league, me, Bjorn, Caleb, and Nick. And so for the last 15 years. So like things like that where you stay connected with people in different ways. But I'm gonna let Caleb introduce himself real quick, and then as questions come up, feel free to ask Caleb or Nick. I know they both have families they're taking care of as well, so they're welcome to hop off whenever they need to. But Caleb, can you give us a light introduction? We're excited to have you here.
Johnny, thanks for having me as always. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate everybody, John. Appreciate the introduction. I do not know if I can follow Nick West though. I do not know that. I mean, it's gonna be a significant downgrade when I'm speaking to you guys, because in all reality, Nick is the best at what he does, and he's a great human. So I hope you guys. I hope everybody on the call was taking notes, because NBA franchises at a high level run because of Nick West. So I don't know if again, like I said, I don't know if I can follow that up, Johnny, really well. So, but I'm gonna try my best here. So.
Yeah, no, sounds great. Well, yeah, so questions, feel free to ask them either, or they can both answer. But Chance, awesome to have you. Chance, I've never met you, so if you want to tell us just where you're from and everything, and then ask your question, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Right now, I'm based just outside Salt Lake City, so really close to the Jazz, who I interned last year in sales. But I'm originally from Michigan, so when I moved across the nation last year, it's been really good. So, but yeah, Nick and Caleb, thank you for joining, and then John, Mr. Ross, thank you for putting this on. It's been really cool for me. I know I saw this opportunity a few days ago, but I had I saw the dates and I had some scheduling complications with my work, but I was able to get those maneuvered just so I could be here. But my question's for Nick or Caleb. In my position where I'm an aspiring NBA front office guy, and I'm reaching out to a bunch of people, and you guys are getting all kinds of messages. And you guys have kind of touched on this already, but what are the best kind of things that I could put into a message that's short and sweet, that's not too long to read? Because I know you guys have all kinds of messages to kind of, well, what's some things that I can put in a message to kind of gain some kind of level of interest or respect? And yeah, I guess that's the question. So
Yeah, I'll let Nick start us off with this one.
Okay. That's a great question. It's not easy. It's kind of one of those things that there's a lot of art to it, I think I'll say this, one thing that I think can be tough that I see a lot of is people attaching 20-page work samples or documents. While those things are very impressive, as you mentioned in the question, a lot of times people don't have time to look at it, right? You're in the middle of something, whether it be training camp or the season. So I would keep it brief. I think, like I said earlier, my approach is always to try and see if someone can get on the phone with you. Hey, do you have 5 or 10 minutes? I'd love to ask you some questions and find something out about their story. So, hey, I noticed you came up in the G League, or I noticed you went to Michigan, you're a Michigan guy. So I noticed you went to Michigan, or whatever it may be. I noticed you played in college. Figure out something within their story. Usually you can find someone's information on LinkedIn, or, if they're in a position on the NBA.com directory, you can read about their bio. But find something in their bio that's unique to them and put that in your email, right? Make it more about you wanting to learn from them than them needing to hear about you, right? But tell them a little bit about yourself. Hey, I interned in sales with the Jazz. I would really love to break into basketball ops. I have a passion around coaching, or I have a passion around travel and logistics. Figure out who you're contacting, what kind of the skill set that relates to their job that you want to highlight, and then figure out some things about their background that you can kind of put in that email that you want to learn from. Because I think when you make it about wanting to hear someone else's story, they're going to be apt to, oh yeah, I'll get on the phone. We can talk for a minute. And just make it hey, just if you got 5 or 10 minutes, I'd love to just hear more about these things about your background. It really resonates with me. here's what I'm looking to do. And like you said, just make it pretty brief. But those are a couple of key things that I would put in there just to get their attention, rather than like, it's this long email with like all your work. I have people email me all the time. So, and they'll list like 20 things they've done on their resume in the body of the email. And it's like, I've done this, 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 and this. And while that's impressive, it's like, being in the league, like there's guys like Caleb and Johnny. I mean, you're fortunate to be around these amazing people that have such skill sets. So someone telling me what they've done outside of the league and they haven't had a lot of experience yet, well, I'm going to be like, great job. It's like, I'm around all these people that are just at the top of their profession. So that's not what's going to get your attention, right? It just connect with them and try to get them on the phone would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, great stuff, Nick. Chance, just the only thing I would add to that, because Nick laid it out pretty well, is to utilize that form of communication as a supplement, not as a primary. And I think that that's very, very important, because like, Nick mentioned all the topics with that, like if that's going to be your primary initial form of communication, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And obviously, like as the years go by, you just meet people, right? And I would say, again, I think maybe an area to focus on is your follow-ups versus like your introduction. And I know that can be difficult because you're looking kind of for an entry like into a organization or into somebody's department. But again, I think, again, as you kind of start building your network and start building your relationships, I think utilizing as a supplement versus a primary is a big key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff, guys. Yeah, and one other thing, like, being in sales, like you got your foot in the door, which is huge. And like using that, like you have a Jazz email that you can reach out to other people in the Jazz. You can check in with your G League team and see if there's like, work on operations there you can, volunteer or help out with. And so, for anyone here, it's like, even if you're like in an NBA city, it's like that's a team you can reach out to and just see if will you guys let me take a tour or an informational interview, or just connecting wherever you can connect at. David, awesome to have you again, brother. What do you got for us?
Yeah, John, thanks again for having me. Nick, and obviously really enjoyed hearing your journey. And Caleb, you both can kind of jump in on this, because Nick, you talked a lot about relationships and whatnot and the importance of using those. And, whether it was with Gerg or with Rich Cho coming back and kind of sort of you reconnecting with him years later. And obviously, Caleb, not having heard your story, but I know you're not where you are without people having helped you. So can each of you speak on maybe a time where somebody maybe gave you a shot when you were hitting a couple walls, or reached down and helped you when they didn't have to, or something of that extent? Because obviously everyone can talk about this business being, hey, you got to know stuff, you got to do stuff, but ultimately it's a relationship business. And obviously, Nick, you really hammered that home. And just a little snippet about me. And obviously, Zoom, in some senses, helps me, but in some senses, it doesn't. Because the one thing that sets me apart is none of you can tell, like, I use a wheelchair. But obviously, so Zoom allows me to be on even ground in some senses. But in some senses, it doesn't allow me to be what sets me apart. So again, like relationship, Nick, you hit really home on, was a big part of it. So can each of you just speak about, kind of a relationship that you really hold fast to, or that really helped you in your journey?
I'll let Caleb go, because I think too, like Caleb, maybe given some of his background, I'll let Caleb start for sure.
Yeah, David, great question, man. Again, like Nick touched on, and I wasn't on the call yet when he touched on, right? But it's like, obviously we're in the basketball world, right? But life is about relationships, right? And we got to just kind of, obviously, like I like to say, the example is, they say life is 6 degrees of separation. Well, like basketball and sports is like 3, right? Like there's going to be various peoples on this call as you keep furthering your education and trying to get as much information, you being a student of the game. if you want to go the coaching route or the front office route, or the basketball ops route, right? Obviously, there's various, jobs that you can possibly get. And you just, over time, over years, when you work all these camps, when you work all these, you go to summer league, you have all these, Zoom calls, it just kind of starts building up. Hey, I remember I saw David here, like, hey, I'm going to go say hi to him. Hey, and, they just it builds over time, right? And obviously we live like in a microwave world that everything is like right now or happens. And again, it's a very competitive market at every level, regardless of the space. Everybody wants to work in sports. Obviously like coaching staffs, I can only speak from a coaching standpoint. These staffs kind of have become bigger in the NBA, with player development exploding. And but again, I think like, again, it's no different than like in life. Like you just have to build these relationships over time and, just keep working on them in an authentic fashion. And like, I know for me, like I can, and I'm sure Nick talked about a couple coaches that have kind of really mentored us and helped us. We have some of the same people in our lives, in Johnny's life, because obviously we started in the same place, right? We were all drafted by the Blazers, for the lack of better words. So, if it was Tim Gergridge, Bobby Medina, people and coaches that I'm sure Nick touched on, that just kind of impacted us, right? Impacted us. And again, I'm sure in your journey, like there's people that have impacted you, and I think you're going to kind of circle back when you or them get an opportunity and keep going from there.
Yeah, that's well said. The only thing I would, I guess, add to is, Johnny kind of touched on this. You know, I've always kind of gone into it with a couple of mindsets. Number one, I'm going to work really, really hard, and whatever they give me, I want to do really well, right? That's number one. And then number two, like, how can I just genuinely connect with people I'm working with? Because at the end of the day, no matter what job you're doing, whether it's you're working in an office setting, you're a coach, you're in my role, you're working at Microsoft, like I touched on earlier, I've always just I want to go to work with people that I enjoy working with, right? I want work to be pleasant. We're spending a lot of time there, and Caleb and I being fathers, like you get that perspective even more. Like this is time away from my family, right? So I want this time to be meaningful. I want to have purpose in my work. I want to have good relationships. So those are two things I've always tried to do. And then what I've learned is when you've done a really good job for people and you've intentionally connected well with them, then you can ask them like, hey, look, I'm struggling with this. Cause like your question was, who have people step out and helped you when you were hitting a wall or you needed an opportunity? And I think the answer to that would be, I've always felt comfortable doing that and asking people for that when I've worked really hard for him and I have a relationship. So Caleb mentioned Bobby Medina and Tim Gergridge. When after spending 4 years in Seattle and kind of doing everything I was asked and trying to just do a really good job and getting to know them and going out to lunch and just being friends, right? Then I felt comfortable saying like, hey, who do you know around the league that can help, that has an opportunity? And they were fully willing to do that. I mean, like right away, Gerg's like, yeah, I know Mark Morgenstein, I'll get you in touch like tomorrow. And so I think that was possible because I just tried to intentionally connect with those guys. I didn't ask them for a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to work really hard for them. And I think that pays off. So, yeah, I think in life, when you just have an intentional connection with people, you'd be amazed where it goes. And it can just be like Johnny referenced that we're all in fantasy football league together. Caleb and I do a fantasy baseball league together. Like that, we talk all the time. It's a fun way to keep in touch, but I genuinely enjoy just connecting with these guys because they're great people, and so whether it's a job or not, that's for life in terms of those friendships. That you can't put a price on that. So that'd be just something to add to that.
Yeah, that's great stuff, guys. And I must say, for the reason we're all here in part is because Caleb Canales is the one who gave me a chance. He was the one who hired me as a video intern with the Trailblazers, and so that's how I got started, and my career got started was it kind of similar, like Caleb and Tim Grass were going through 40 resumes, and mine resonated with them enough for them to give me a call, and me and Caleb connected on that call and built a friendship and relationship that lasted far beyond basketball. And like I said, these relationships, they're important not just for your basketball career but for your life, because and Bobby Medina's came up multiple times because all three of us have lived with him. Which is wild. Like, he's just someone who, became just such a person who just took people under his wing, and mentored people and gave people opportunities. All right, our next question is from our absolute favorite Los Angeles Clipper, Jada Edwards.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Nick and Caleb, for taking the time out of your day to speak to us. So my first question would be, what's something you know now that you wish you would have known then that kind of would have benefited your career or even just your life in general, or even something that you wish you would have done sooner? And then a follow-up question, for those looking to get into the basketball operations role specifically, what would you kind of want to see on their portfolio, with that being, just a well-rounded role in general?
Well, Johnny, you were still my best hire ever, man. So I appreciate it. So yeah, no, Jada, I think the best thing I think maybe I would tell myself, my younger self, is buckled up, because it's gonna be all right. I think there's no like linear path to this. Again, like similar to like life and parenting, like Nick said, your perspective at times will shift. But obviously, like everybody in here is, is a high level competitor, has a love for the sport, or a combination of, of everything, and again, when we're kind of young coming up in this business, there is experienced people for a reason, right? But like, it's just, they try to help and they try to pour into us. Not everybody, but there's people, I'm sure you have mentors in your career, that kind of pour into you and help you kind of navigate through the mud, because it's going to get muddy. It just is. It's part of it. Like I said, it's very competitive. It's a lot of people, trying to compete for the same position and feel that they should get an opportunity. So again, I'm just a big component in controlling what you can control, which is like, again, just educating yourself in the sport, because when you do get your opportunity, you have to make it work at that time, because it's going to be rare to come back around. So and obviously I don't know your story much, but if you're with an NBA organization already, like you just understand like the climate of it and how competitive it is on a daily basis. And it's just everybody needs to kind of have win the day mindset, not only for the team.
Yeah, I just great questions, by the way. I think for my younger self, it's probably having a longer term view in my head. I've always done a good job of taking the next opportunity and putting my head down and working, and I think a lot of that's paid off. But there are times that I think I needed to cast better visions on not only my career but my life. And I think being a parent now for my daughter's 16, and I'm practicing driving with her, so it's like things have come full circle, and you just see things a little differently. At least I do. And so, we're helping them to cast visions for their like life beyond high school, and into adulthood and their careers. And I think I wish I would have done a little bit better job of that, especially in my younger years. I think I'm doing a much better job now. And then your other question was specifically for a basketball ops role. Is that correct?
Yeah, what would you want to see in kind of just a portfolio?
And are you thinking more like director of ops type roles, logistics, travel, those type? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, what I always ask people when we interview for an operations role is are they passionate about doing travel and itineraries and logistics and details, and getting people and teams to and from, because if the answer to that is I don't really enjoy it, you definitely don't want to be in these type of roles, because it can get very the great thing about the NBA is there's a lot of variety in each season, as you know, right? But there's a lot of there can be monotony to this, right? Sometimes I'm coding a team credit card statement with 200 transactions, but I know how important those things are to budgets and how we're running things. And so there's parts of my job that I've just got to be okay with doing that. And my brain works well that way. I like structure and order and details and organization, but not everyone likes that. Some people are really creative. I'm not a super creative worker, right? But I'm great in structure. And so, one of the tools I've kind of utilized as I've gotten older is some of those strength finder type tools. So my wife's company, they use a core values index, and it kind of helps you categorize your personality type and what your skills are. And so there's a ton of those things out there, but I would really encourage anyone on this call, like, take some of those, right? Figure out how you're wired, because I think understanding your wiring in terms of your work style and what you are passionate about also informs the type of jobs you do. Because we've had people come into ops where they just, like, after a little while, they just don't want to do it, and it's like, that's the job, right? It's just going to keep coming up, right? These trips and all these things we got to do. But I've had people, like, we just had an intern this summer who is now the head ops person for the remix, because he came in, he loved it. He was just passionate and highly detailed and all over it. So yeah, organization, detail, prioritization, just being kind of enjoying. You have to kind of strangely enjoy all the scheduling and itineraries, all those things, right? And if you do, then you're going to do great in this. And if you don't, there's probably something different for you, right? And so that would be my thought. So as far as what you want on your resume, I think just finding opportunities to do that type of work. And Johnny referenced this earlier, but you could be, if you're in college, I always say to people, hey, figure out who the director of ops is, see if you can work for them, volunteer, right? If you're in an MBA city, figure out if there's some jobs you can do. It's just finding jobs that will help you in the travel logistics, scheduling, all those pieces. It can be for a corporation. I did it at Microsoft for 5 years, really helped me prepare for this job. So it does not have to be in sports, right? As long as you are doing those core type works and you can put that on your resume that you've had experience with volume, travel, logistics, and those pieces, that's going to help you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Great stuff. Jada, can you tell them a little bit of what you do for the Clippers, and congratulations on your NBA Rising Stars?
Oh, cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm entering my 3rd season with the Clippers. I actually have been working in tech with the Clippers. And then I just got accepted into the NBA's Future Basketball Operation Stars program. And so I'm actually week 2 into it. And so it's been great, actually. I love both sides.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you.
All right. Before we get to Caleb's question, I want to give Caleb, Coach Caleb. Coach, can you tell us just a little bit, for any of you who are looking for the coaching route? Caleb hosts classes as well that are very detailed, and smaller classes where you can really engage with him and coaching. So Caleb, could you tell us a little bit about what you're up to on Sunday evenings?
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. Yeah, so our academy that we're slowly building from, obviously a coaching and a player, kind of focusing on the youth development as well. But it's the Huddle. It's DA, and then Huddle, HUDDLE. The Huddle. You can find us on IG or on Twitter, and on any social platform. But like Johnny said, we're doing like a deeper dive for the coaching. Obviously, it's more entailed of the leadership. I know we have a student here that's been a part of our growing on Sunday nights with our coaching, Mr. Coach Ward, down here on my right. But yeah, so we try to get into the weeds a little more, for the X's and O's or the leadership aspects of it. And like Johnny said, and obviously everyone's more than welcome to join us. It's usually going to be on Sunday nights going forward as our team schedule, my team schedule, and coaching schedule kind of gets worked out here for the G League season. It'll be usually on Sunday nights at 7:30, and we'll blast it out on social so you guys can kind of see it, and then I'll send it to Johnny so you guys and girls can watch, and you guys are more than welcome to join us.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Caleb. All right, question from Caleb with a C.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So this is for Nick and for Caleb. Thank you guys for taking time to talk to us and answer our questions. A little bit on my background. I'm also with the LA Clippers. That's how I got to meet Jada, and that's how I got connected into this class. So very grateful for that. Did a little bit of sales there, and I'm also in tech too right now over there. But you guys talked a lot about how you often wear many hats in your positions. So how do you guys specifically prioritize the time and tasks? Like, what strategies do you use to help stay efficient, stay on top of everything?
Well, Caleb with the C, Nick's a lot more organized, and he's got a lot more fires he's got to put out on a daily basis than I do. So I'll kind of let him that lead off here. He didn't fail to mention that I did finish last in our fantasy baseball league. So it's just,
Okay, see, here we
yeah.
go. And
Yeah.
he was second last year and in the championship. So we're not going to get into that, Kay. That's all right. That's you got a proud organization, man. You're going to be back. Don't worry about it. That's a great question on prioritization. That's a lot of factors, right? I think for me, the time of year in the league, right? So that the time of year dictates a lot. So if it's during the season, anything with team travel that comes up, I'm going to have to move that up pretty high, right? To the top of the list. Obviously anything from our general manager or head coach is up at the top of the list. So it's who is asking you to do the job, right? Who is asking for something to get done is critical. And then the timing of the task in terms of where we are in the calendar. So if we make a trade, I could be working on team travel and something else. I got to drop everything, right? All of a sudden it's like, hey, we need to get this guy here tomorrow, or we need this guy here like yesterday. And so that's happened many times in my career. And so the other piece of the puzzle is you got to surround yourself with really good people, and you got to be really connected as a team. So I've got some really great people on our operations team. We all kind of have specific jobs, and my job is to also have a 30,000-foot view on the department and make sure that we're all executing. And then when these kind of fire drills come up, we've done it before, we know who does what, and we've got a system. So I think having processes in place, right? So we have a lot of documents of like, here's our trade process, right? Here's our training camp process. Here's our travel process. In my role, those process sheets are huge, because then when like something happens, you can go back to that. It's kind of like I was telling my kids this the other night. It's like a lot of my job is like having a pilot's checklist, right? And each season is going to provide a different variety. Last year we traded our franchise player right before training camp. Didn't have a playbook for that, but I had a playbook for how we execute a trade, and I had a playbook for what we do when we get new guys in and how we onboard them. And so we've got a gal here who's awesome at onboarding players. Like, she is just Beth Hancock, who Johnny and Caleb know so well. And she is like just wonderful at getting players and their families on board. It's okay if you take that, right? I'm going to take the travel, and then between all of us, we're going to get it done. And so back to the prioritization piece, how this relates is if you try to do everything yourself, I learned this really quickly in my job. I tried to do too much myself, and that's when you're going to drop the ball. If you've got a really great team around you and you guys are all distributing the workload well, then when things come up that you have to shift to, you have the space in your day and you have the team around you to get it done. And Caleb can attest to this very much in the coaching world, right? All these coaches are taking different players for pregame shooting and skill development, right? The league has become really specialized, especially in that area that I've seen. Video guys have maybe certain games they're scouting. Johnny can tell you all day long about that, right? But as a team, they're each taking different components. But again, if you're trying to do all this yourself, you're going to drop the ball. So I learned really quickly how to delegate, how to prioritize things, because if you don't, you're going to, especially in my job, you're going to be swimming upstream and you're going to be working all day long. And again, when you try to do it all yourself, you're going to drop the ball eventually. So those would be my pieces of advice for that.
Good stuff. We're going to have a quick timeout here. It is 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 Eastern. If you need to go, obviously, you are welcome to. For those hands raised, keep them raised. Same with Nick and Caleb. When you need to jet out, let me know. You've given us your time and we appreciate it. So you guys are welcome to keep answering questions, but let me know when you need to take off. But it's been amazing to have both of you here, the whole squad. Awesome to see you guys. You guys are the best. Yeah. All right. Orlando, what do you got, man?
I appreciate Nick and Caleb for all the great information. Now, this is more for Caleb. I hope Atlanta wakes up. I'm an Atlanta fan. And I'm sorry for what our country did to you guys in the Olympic qualifier. Our apologies. I didn't expect it to be that much, but it is what it is. But looking at your career, man, you've had a great career. Now, way back when you started 20 years ago, you went high school, then you went to college, and then from college you made the jump.
Yeah.
As a Latino, what you think set yourself apart? What did you show the team, like, hey, this is something that's going to set me apart from everybody, especially back then where I tell people I'm from Puerto Rico, it's like, I love basketball. It's like, wait, you guys play basketball down there? I thought you guys only have boxers and baseball players, you know, and you as a Mexican background, it's like, wait, don't you guys only play soccer? And it's like, no, we actually have a pretty good history in basketball. So I'm just curious as what did you use to try to set yourself apart from other people at that time?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, man, we came up a little short against PR, but I'm looking forward to the rematch here coming up pretty soon. So, um, no, listen, great question. I mean, look, I just always go back and you know, obviously my biggest role models in my life have been my parents, right? So their work ethic. You know, when I got my opportunity, you know, obviously like when you said high school, you know, I really visualized when I was a high school coach, like I was preparing, like I was coaching an NBA team. And you know, that mindset for me has never changed up to this date. And, you know, I don't think it will ever change, you know, but you know, some of the key components that we hear all the time that kind of become cliche-ish, but it's the truth, obviously, in my story and my path is that, you know, the hard work, the dedication, the commitment, you know, being invested, you know, at times being, you know, obsessed with the coaching profession and trying to put my best foot forward. And, you know, like Nick, like, you know, I know you guys are great listeners because everyone's in this call, but what like Nick said is very, very key in terms of like, when you get these opportunities, people are going to start champion for you because they see who you are and they see your work ethic, right? Like no one's going to put their name on the line if they feel that you're not being great at your position currently, you know. So that's what I always try to do, right? Like when I got a video internship, I was trying to be the best video intern in the world. You know, when I got promoted to video coordinator, I was trying to be the best video coordinator in the world, you know. And that I just completely, you know, took that mindset in every position that I had. And, you know, knowing that if that's my mindset in every position, I never had to shift my mindset, right? Like I never had to, or I'm going to try to do more now, or, you know, like it's just, it was built in who I am to this day. And, you know, obviously my roles have changed throughout the years in terms of my roles and responsibility on different teams. You know, I've been blessed to be an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, you know, have every coaching role possible. You know, so now, you know, it's kind of fun, you know, having these young coaches around me because they keep me sharp. And then, you know, at the same time, I'm still a student, you know, I'm never going to stop being a student. So, you know, I learn from them as much as, you know, obviously my experience, they learn from me.
No, that's great. Okay. George, I got your message. So we'll get Nicolette, Farzad, Richard, and George. Nicolette, great to see you as always, Nicolette. Nicolette of Fox Sports is here.
Great to see you, John, and great to see you again, Caleb. And thank you both and Nick for taking the time to chat with us tonight and staying on longer. Question I have is, Caleb, you kind of actually already touched upon this a little bit at the end of the previous answer, but basketball is always ever changing. Really, this industry, there's a lot I'm firmly believing to learn and ever growing, especially once you're in the industry and really not just keeping up to date what's going on, but how do you guys in your individual roles, one, I don't want to say keep your skills sharp, but especially coming from corporate America and then coming back, how does one really want to stay intact into not just what's going on in the NBA, but like what's intact, like industry wise, what's kind of not trends, but per se, but I guess how does one really continue to learn and better yourselves as you're going into ops, furthering ops on the ops side and in the coaching side? That I know it's kind of broad, but
Well, I'll let Nick take it because I've been fired a couple of times, Nick. So, you know, Nick's been on the job for 20 plus years, so he's probably got a better answer for you. So
Come on, man. So which one of us on the call has been a head coach in this league? Okay, that's you. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, it's like I'm always trying to learn from the people I'm working with. So I've had two really good assistant GMs here that I've reported to, Bill Branch and now Andre Patterson. And so both guys are really skilled and they're really process oriented. And I've learned you try to take something from every person you work with, right? Coach Stotts, I mean, all these, Caleb, Johnny, all these people that are so good at what they do, and just being open-minded, right? Sometimes I think it's very, like, I've been doing this job a while, and so I think what I've tried really hard to avoid is thinking I have all the answers all the time, right? Well, this is how I've done it forever, so I'm not going to make any changes. And I think when you do that, that's when it leads to trouble, right? That's when you can become unsuccessful, because you're not open-minded to pivoting. We've switched a lot of processes up in my role and within our department, just because we learned from some other team or someone else. Like Andre's been with a few different organizations, right? It's like these people that have been with multiple organizations have a lot to tell you. They've seen it done differently in multiple ways, right? And sometimes they were doing it very similar to how you did it, and sometimes they're doing it different. We're using an application called Slack a lot now, which I've always used email, and I was kind of resistant at first, and now I've realized it's really streamlined a lot of things I'm doing, right? So I've just, for me, it's just trying to be really open-minded, not getting too set in my ways and my processes, but also recognizing, okay, if I've been doing a process really well, then I'm not going to just be changing with the wind either. Like I'm going to have some valid reasons why I make adjustments. But if there are, then I have to be willing to change, and I have to be willing to grow, right? To your question, right? This business changes so much. So on the ops space, that's really, for me, the critical components is just trying to just be very grounded in my processes, but also how can I get better? And after every season's over, after you've kind of digested things, sit down and reflect on what you did well, what can you improve, and get feedback from other people, right? So I can do this in my own mind all day long, but I need to get feedback from our coaching staff and our general manager, assistant GMs, and other people that I've worked with, and what can we do better as a team operationally to help the business succeed.
And I would just add, from a coaching standpoint, Nicolette, again, I'm just continue to be a student. Like that's kind of my approach with it. Like I think coaching is a lot like fashion, right? Like I think everything's pretty much been invented, but it all kind of circles back. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, however long. From schemes, from just the technical aspect of it. Obviously, you want to stay on top of it, like with the new trends. Offensive systems, defensive systems, across the league, across, wherever conference you're at, or whatever division you're at, or coaching at, or whatever level you're coaching at. But yeah, I think just again, like Nick touched on it, like you have to be the toughest critic on yourself, which I'm sure everyone on this call is, right? To push to improve, right? And understand that your strengths and weaknesses, and to work on those. And just like we ask players to do, right? Like, hey, in the summertime, work on your strengths, work on your weaknesses, come back a better player. And, that's the challenge for us as coaches, to come back as better leaders and as better coaches.
Thank you both.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Farzad.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Caleb, again for your time. My question is, there's so many lines of information now with the advancement of analytics, tracking data, AI, video technology. How do you balance all this information to come to a consensus on a decision? And lastly, how is all that information streamlined throughout a front office to help everyone come together and make a decision, taking into account everyone's perspectives and point of views and philosophies, with so many members of a front office now? How does that process look like with all this information available now?
Yeah, a great question. From a coaching perspective, I love analytics. I'm a huge fan. I take in as much as I possibly could absorb. But I have to know my players, right? Like who can handle what, right? Because everyone learns at different levels. Some guys are overthinkers. Some guys want all the information. Some guys just want to play on instinct. And again, that's from a coaching perspective. Like I think you have to understand your team, and you have to understand how much your team can handle. Because again, like we know numbers, for the most part, you can make numbers say what you want them to say. So again, like all the information is great, but how you filter it out, I think really matters and is really important. I've been blessed to be with a lot of great franchises with a lot of, great analytics departments. because I want to see, how I can get better and how we can help our team get better. But at the same time, I also have to learn and understand our players and the players that I'm specifically working with, because I don't want to give too much information to a player that doesn't want it, one, and that he's not going to be the best version of himself, if I kind of overload him with information.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Caleb has a lot more experience just with those decisions on the coaching side, obviously, than I do. I just think the really great analytics people I've seen in my time here, they have a great blend of being really smart and being so good at what they do in terms of providing information, but they're able to explain it in basketball language. And so what I mean by that is, it's not talking in such high level analytic type terms where you can't break it into basketball. How does it relate to basketball, right? Now, as a long suffering Seattle Mariner fan, as Caleb knows real well, we talk about this. An example that I just witnessed kind of as a fan is they fire the manager and the hitting coach, and they bring in two former players. One is Dan Wilson, who manages the team now, and Edgar Martinez, who is a Hall of Fame hitter. And the hitters greatly improved under Edgar. And the resounding theme was he explained it in simple terms to us. We simplified everything, right? Like they had so much information that these guys are like trying to hit 98-mile-an-hour fastballs. And well, if the ball is low and away, then I need to do this, right? I think it was such overload that they weren't translating the skills to performance. And so, there's still something to be said for like grassroots coaching, and getting in the cage or the gym and getting to work. And I think Edgar came in, from everything I've read, he came in and just like, we're going to really simplify this. We need to not overthink it. And he was able to coach them and relate it to them, obviously being a great player. So I just found it really fascinating to see that kind of play out. Now, again, 34 games is a smaller sample, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. And as Caleb said, that's where the analytics comes in. Like, okay, we're seeing a good trend here, but are we able to project that over 162 games, right? And that time will tell. But I love analytics too. I think there's a great place for it. As Caleb knows, I'm a huge numbers guy. I love baseball. I love all the statistics in the NBA and all sports. But I do think you got to merge it in language to your players where you can put it into play, where they're going to absorb it and not be so high level where it's like, I don't get this, right? So you gotta be able to merge the two worlds, in my opinion, to have success.
Appreciate the insight. Thank you.
All right, we got two more questions, but Caleb, Nick, anyone, if you need to go, you're welcome to go. Richard, what do you got for us?
Thanks. I'll be quick. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I got some coaching gold last weekend. I learned to find your voice, and I think Nick's probably guilty of this. I know Caleb is, but we love the product on the court. We love to watch the games. I'll bet Nick sneaks down and watches practice and attends games. And same here. So who could I contact to watch a practice or watch a pregame shoot around on the road? Would it be a Dobo, or what's the best way? I'm willing to just bring a notebook and sit in a corner, but I'd like your thoughts on. I've tried to call front offices and that, but what's the best way to just sneak in and watch practice or training camp?
Yeah, if you have a relationship, I mean, obviously, Richard, you have an open invitation to the Texas Legends practice anytime you want. So, yeah, no, obviously, I think if you have a relationship with anybody in the coaching staff and they kind of check with the proper channels as they go, obviously the head coach or the general manager have to sign off on it at some point. So it will cross like Nick's desk, but then Nick doesn't have the final say on that. So again, if it's on the road with the Blazers or with a certain team, again, I think your best avenue is going to be somebody on the staff to kind of advocate that obviously they know you as a person, and then kind of go down that road. And like I said, obviously it's usually easier, like, at home or on the road, shoot arounds are a little tougher because it's usually at the arena. But, I think again, like, if you ever want to come to a Legends practice, man, we might put you in the drills too, coach. So,
Yeah, I can't really add much. I think that's perfectly said.
I'm muted. Yeah, the one thing I would add, obviously, like having a connection with the team, but also for all of you is being in. One thing I always talk about is be involved in basketball somewhere, if that's what you want to do. If you contact a team and go, I want to work in the NBA, can I come to practice? You're not going to get a response. If you go, I'm volunteering at my high school, I coach a team at the YMCA, I am a graduate assistant, those things could get you an open door. So you have to be involved somewhere, have some kind of connection. Like I always say, you can't just say, oh, it's my dream, this is what I want to do. You have to have some kind of experience, something you can go, I work here, can you help me gain more experience? And people are typically happy to help you take that next step. Final question, George, what do you got?
Okay, thank you, John. Real quickly, I just like to thank the three of you and your other guests for these exceptional 2+ hours. And then Coach Canales, you mentioned degrees of separation. Many years ago, I worked in Puerto Rico, and my colleague, David Villarreal, who's from Zapata, Texas, born and raised there, used to purchase suits from your dad in Laredo. I don't know if he heard me.
Yeah, how about that,
Is
George?
Coach Canales still on?
Yeah, that's kind of cool, man.
Oh.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. My dad's suited a lot of people.
And
Thanks,
this was,
yeah.
That's
isn't
amazing.
that crazy?
Yeah,
And
that's
then
crazy.
ever since then, I followed your career.
Yeah.
I followed your career. And Orlando, I just wanted to compliment you on your postings on LinkedIn. I read all of them, Orlando, and you have some excellent scouting reports. So thank you for that. And I'll get to my question now. My passion is scouting. However, living here in El Paso, Texas, and being somewhat geographically isolated, I focus on scouting players at schools such as UTEP, New Mexico State, the Lobos up in Albuquerque, Arizona State, etc. How can I, or do you have any recommendations as to how I can scout other college players without just relying on game film?
George, believe it or not, if you rely yourself on game film these days, you might be separated already. Because but yeah, no, obviously, like, I mean, again, I know travel, there's expenses and costs, you try to go to, but obviously you can go to the UTEP home games, which I'm sure you do, like you said, and try to always have a scouting report for the other team, right? So you kind of have like 20 looks at other teams, give or take, every year. But yeah, no, I would reach out, and again, I'm sure you already have, but I would reach out to these recruiting services that maybe don't have a presence in your area, and helping them first, and again, because again, these big time scouting services, obviously, they're going to have the top players, but you might have some great information from them from your perspective, and kind of start building that that kind of relationship with these recruiting services, or with these draft boards, or because so many more are coming up, and again, in your area, I think where you're not close to a lot, you can kind of use that to your advantage, flip it around, and then try to be like the voice from there for these groups.
Excellent. Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. I agree with Caleb, and one thing you'll get access to is Cerebro, which is just like another tool you can use. So next week, Ryan from Cerebro will be here to do a demo with that, and everyone will get to just have another skill that you can use and add to your scouting niches. And I also have some of Caleb's dad's suits. Great man. So that was an awesome story. Nick, Caleb, thank you so much again for being here. I'm going to give you each a final word, just of life advice, basketball advice, as you take off. So Nick, you're up, and then Caleb, if you just want to share one last word, and thanks again for being here.
Thanks a lot, Johnny. It's great seeing you and Caleb, and just treasured my time working with you guys for many years. So just this is an honor to be here. Yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot tonight. A lot of just really great questions, by the way, from everyone. I love it when you go into situations like this and get great questions. Yeah, I think my biggest thing is just put people first. Life goes really fast, right? Especially as you get older, and when you're in the middle of working with great people like Johnny and Caleb, you think it's going to go on forever, but things change a lot. And we're seeing a lot of the league is changing quickly and jobs change quickly. And, the days of working in a corporation for 20, 25 years is gone, right? Like that doesn't happen very often anymore. So just not taking people for granted, I think, and just, really investing in people while you're with them, right? While you are working with people and in your friendships, I mean, this is a cool industry, but there's a lot of really good industries, right? These are all at the end of the day jobs, but I think when you put people first, right, it leads to good things, both in your personal life with friendships and also in your work life. I think, like we've touched on here, all of us are really, all three of us, Johnny, Caleb, and I, we've had some great mentors and people that have helped us, right? Without those people, we're not in these positions. So you just try to repay that as best you can.
Yeah, just to add to Nick again, just no magic words. Just as hard as it is, just enjoy the season you're in. Whatever season that is in your path in your career, just try to enjoy it. As hard as it is like Nick mentioned during the call, like having long-term vision. But with a short-term mindset in terms of just kind of enjoying where you are and the journey of it. A lot of coaching cliches, but it is the truth. And like you guys said, I think you guys will look back in your careers and appreciate every step a little bit more, but just kind of enjoy where you are right now and enjoy the season that you're in. But like always, Johnny, thanks for having me. Thanks for having us, and have a great season with your course and everyone's space. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Caleb. Thanks, Nick. We'll see you guys later, and we'll see you on the fantasy football field this weekend.
Thanks, guys.
All right, later. All right, well, guys, great questions. Loved our guests. Loved you guys. Great stuff. Next week, like I said, Danny Thompson, also a former student. Now he did some media with Charlotte Hornets and now is with ESPN. He's going to come back, so that's awesome. Kendra Cheney, she was an NBA trainer with the Blazers, is going to be here, and then Ryan from Cerebro Sports is also going to be and kind of do a live training of Cerebro. And Bjorn, obviously, like he said, works for them. He's going to be getting everyone accounts. So, and then like as far as the portfolio, I'll send some examples of things on the Slack channel. If anyone's having any trouble with the Slack channel, send me a message. We'll try to make sure you're on there. But yeah, the first things are just, picking your team and starting to just put together a format of players, rosters, salary cap, stats, and then we'll kind of add some things as we go. Bjorn, Mike, anything to add?
So just kind of as an aside, like just general G League, like it's kind of a like skeleton crew operation. Like I did some stuff with Idaho Stampede back in 2012, and it was very limited, like between like the head coach, couple assistants, and then couple ops people. But it's like a very like bare bones, like very hands-on operation type thing. So like if you were to like pick one of your teams as like a G League team, like you probably got better odds of getting like if you're really serious about like working in basketball and getting eyes on your work, I think you've got decent odds doing stuff with like the G League. Like if you sent something, don't everyone do Windy City and then send it to John. But like I'm just saying in general, like if there's a local team, I I I think that is definitely something that might be in your favor, especially in the G League. Now that there's so many too, and it's just continuing to, every team's gonna have some kind of relationship. So
Yeah, it's great stuff. No, that's true. And yeah, if you want to do an NBA and a G League team, or you could do a parent and under, like operate how you want to. Like we said, we want you to have fun and build what you want to build. And obviously we're happy to look at them and excited for the rest of the course with you guys. And I know it's late out there on the East Coast, so we'll let everyone go ahead and hop off the call. Usually if we just go 2 hours, we have a time of we just hang out, Q&A, anyone who wants to talk, but we'll go ahead and wrap it up tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
See you guys.
Bye. Thank you.